The plush carpets of Alden Enterprises corporate headquarters muffled Kara's heeled strides as she stormed down the corridor, her expression a storm cloud of barely contained rage. Her sharp features twisted with disdain when her eyes landed on Mr. Harrison, the elderly janitor bent over his mop in the corner of the room. "Still here, Mr. Harrison?" Kara sneered, crossing her arms. "How is it that at your age, you're still scrubbing floors instead of living comfortably in retirement? What have you been doing all these years?" The old man straightened slowly, his back creaking audibly. His face, lined with decades of toil, betrayed no resentment. Instead, he offered her a polite nod. "Miss Kara, I'm just doing my job. Life doesn't always go as planned, and we make do with what we have." Kara's laugh was cold and biting. "Spare me the philosophy. Maybe if you weren't so incompetent, you wouldn't be stuck mopping floors for a living. People like you are a waste of space." Her voice rose, cutting through the otherwise hushed office environment. A few employees passing by dared to glance their way but quickly looked down, not wanting to draw Kara's ire.mr. Harrison hesitated, gripping the mop handle tightly for support. "Miss Kara, with respect, I've given this company everything I could. Your father has always been so kind to me. And now he's wasting his kindness on someone who doesn't deserve it," Kara interrupted, her words laced with venom. She stepped closer, looming over the frail man. "You think my father's generosity will save you from your failures? Think again." Before Mr. Harrison could respond, Kara grabbed the mop from his hands and threw it across the room. The crash of the bucket spilling its soapy contents echoed in the hallway. Mr. Harrison stumbled backward, his frail body shaking under the weight of Kara's verbal assault. "Clean that up," she barked. "You're pathetic. Miss Kara." A calm, authoritative voice broke through the tension. Kara turned sharply to find a tall, impeccably dressed man standing in the doorway. His piercing gaze didn't waver as it locked onto hers. Alexander Reed, a prominent business partner of her father's, exuded an air of quiet power. His presence was commanding, his tailored suit emphasizing the stature of someone who wasn't used to being ignored. "Mr. Reed," Kara greeted him stiffly, attempting to mask her irritation. Alexander's gaze shifted from Kara to Mr. Harrison, who was struggling to steady himself against the wall. "What is going on here?" he asked evenly, though his tone carried a distinct undercurrent of disapproval. "It's none of your concern," Kara said curtly. Alexander ignored her and approached the elderly man. "Mr. Harrison, are you all right?" "I'm fine, sir," Mr. Harrison stammered, clearly shaken. Alexander helped him to a chair, his movements gentle yet efficient. He turned back to Kara, his expression now a mix of disappointment and frustration. "This is how you treat your father's employees? The people who've worked tirelessly for this company?" Kara's jaw tightened. "He's a relic of the past. If he can't keep up, he doesn't belong here." Alexander straightened, his imposing figure towering over her. "If you think cruelty makes you strong, you're mistaken. Strength comes from compassion, something you clearly lack." Kara's face flushed with indignation. "You don't know anything about me or what I've been through." "I know enough," Alexander replied coolly. "Your father built this company on respect and integrity. Behavior like this tarnishes his name and everything he stands for." The sharpness of his words hit their mark, but Kara refused to show it. She crossed her arms, her expression defiant. "Fine," she snapped. "Take him out of here if you care so much. But don't expect me to feel guilty for telling the truth." Alexander said nothing more to her. Instead, he guided Mr. Harrison toward the elevator, ensuring the old man was steady on his feet. Kara watched them go, her chest tightening with an unspoken emotion she quickly shoved aside. She turned on her heel, muttering to herself. "Who does he think he is, lecturing me in my own father's company?" Yet, as she stormed back to her office, a seed of doubt began to sprout within her. For the first time, someone had dared to challenge her cruelty, not with anger, but with quiet strength. Later that afternoon, Mr. Harrison, still pale and moving gingerly from Kara's earlier mistreatment, found himself seated in Alden Steele's expansive office. The room was a testament to power and elegance, with dark mahogany furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, and shelves lined with books and accolades. Despite his discomfort, Harrison's resolve was firm. Alden Steele, Kara's adoptive father, sat behind his grand desk, his tailored suit impeccable, his graying hair neatly combed. He was reviewing reports but looked up with a warm smile when Harrison entered. "Harrison, my old friend," Alden greeted, rising to shake the older man's hand. "What brings you here? Shouldn't you be resting?" "Thank you, sir, but I had to speak with you," Harrison began, his voice tinged with urgency. He eased into the chair Alden gestured toward, his worn hands gripping the armrests tightly. "It's about Kara." Alden's smile faltered, but he kept his tone light. "What about her? You know how fiery she can be. Youthful energy, nothing more." Harrison hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Mr. Steele, with all due respect, it's more than that. She's out of control. Today, she humiliated me and an elderly man who almost passed out due to the torture she gave him in front of others, and even physically lashed out. And this isn't the first time. Her behavior is getting dangerous, not just for us employees but for the company and your reputation." Alden leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowing. "I'm sure she didn't mean any harm. Kara's had a rough time since Ethan," he trailed off, the pain of his adopted son's death still fresh. "She's just grieving in her own way." Harrison leaned forward, his voice firm but kind. "Sir, grief is no excuse for cruelty. She's alienating people, the staff, clients, and anyone who crosses her path. If this continues, it won't be long before word spreads and the name Alden Steele becomes synonymous with arrogance and recklessness. This company is your legacy, and it's too valuable to risk." Alden's jaw tightened. He knew Harrison was right, but his heart ached at the thought of confronting Kara. Since her childhood, he'd showered her with love and indulgence, fearing that any form of discipline might deepen the void left by her tragic past. "I understand your concern, Harrison," Alden finally said, his tone measured. "I'll talk to her. She's a good girl at heart, she is just lost right now. She needs guidance, not judgment." Harrison sighed, his expression softening. "I know you love her, sir. And she's lucky to have you. But love sometimes means setting boundaries. If you don't address this soon, you might lose more than just her." Alden nodded, though his heart felt heavy. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I promise I'll handle it." Harrison rose, his frail frame a stark contrast to the steel determination in his eyes. "I believe in her, Mr. Steele. But she needs to find her way before it's too late." As the door closed behind Harrison, Alden remained seated, staring out at the bustling city below. His mind swirled with thoughts of Kara, his fierce, broken daughter, whose pain was driving her to the brink. He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. He had always avoided confrontation with Kara, choosing instead to shield her from life's harsh realities. But now, it seemed his indulgence had only fueled her descent. For the first time, Alden realized that his unconditional love might not be enough to save her. He would have to act, and soon. Later that evening, the Steele mansion was cloaked in its usual opulence, the beauty of its marble floors and glittering chandeliers in sharp contrast to the tension brewing within its walls. Alden sat in his study, sipping a glass of whiskey, his mind replaying Harrison's words. He sighed deeply, knowing he could no longer avoid the conversation he had been putting off for years. Rising from his chair, he made his way to Kara's room, where the faint sound of music spilled into the hallway. Knocking firmly on the door, he waited. "Come in," Kara called, her voice indifferent. Alden stepped inside to find her lounging on a plush chair, scrolling through her phone. She was still dressed in the sharp black ensemble she had worn to the company earlier, a smirk playing on her lips as if the day's events had been nothing more than a trivial amusement. "Kara, we need to talk," Alden began, his voice calm but tinged with seriousness. Kara glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "About what? Is it the quarterly report? I thought I nailed that presentation." Alden frowned. "You know exactly what this is about. Harrison came to see me today." Her smirk faded slightly, but she remained unbothered. "Oh, the old guy. What about him?" Alden stepped closer, his gaze piercing. What about him? Kara, he's a human being, not some punching bag for you to vent your frustrations on. What you did today was unacceptable. Humiliating him, physically attacking him, what were you thinking? Kara leaned back, crossing her arms. He's a liability, father. If he can't keep up, he shouldn't be working at the company. It's not my fault he's still hanging around when he's clearly past his prime. Alden's jaw tightened, and he exhaled sharply. Kara, he's been with this company since before you were born. He's dedicated his life to steel industries. You don't treat people like that, especially not someone who's given so much to us. She rolled her eyes. So now you're taking his side? Figures. You always jump to defend people who can't even defend themselves. Alden's voice rose, a rare occurrence. This isn't about sides, Kara. This is about right and wrong. And what you did was wrong. Kara stood abruptly, her expression hardening. Wrong? Do you think I'm wrong for pointing out that he's useless? If you want to run this company like a charity, be my guest. But don't expect me to pretend that dead weight like Harrison deserves my respect. Alden stared at her, his heart sinking. For the first time, he truly saw the person she had become, cold, arrogant, and utterly lacking in empathy. He wondered how he had failed to notice it before, how his indulgence and fear of pushing her away had allowed her to spiral so far. Kara, he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. This isn't who you are. This isn't who I raised you to be. She laughed bitterly. Oh, please. Don't act like you know me, father. You spent my entire life trying to shield me from the world. Maybe if you hadn't coddled me so much, I wouldn't have to fend for myself like this. Alden flinched, her words cutting deeper than she realized. I've always loved you, Kara. I wanted to give you everything I never had. But I see now that I've failed you. If this is how you think strength looks, then I've done you a great disservice. For a moment, Kara faltered, a flicker of something vulnerable crossing her face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual defiance. Save the lecture, father, she said, turning away. If you're done, I have things to do. Alden stared at her back, his heart heavy with a mixture of love, frustration, and guilt. He had pampered her, yes, but he had also ignored the warning signs, excusing her behavior as grief, as a young girl, as anything but what it truly was, a cry for help. Kara, he said quietly, this can't go on. One day, you'll realize that how you treat people matters. And I hope, for your sake, it won't be too late. She didn't respond, her posture stiff as she stared out the window. How dare that old fool report me to my father? I will deal with you mercilessly, she said to herself and slumped on her bed. The sun was setting over the city, casting golden hues across the bustling streets. At Greenview Academy, Mrs. Harrison parked her car near the entrance, stepping out with her usual warm smile as she made her way to pick up her two children, Lily and Maximum. Good evening, Mrs. Harrison, the school's receptionist greeted her. Good evening, she replied. I'm here to pick up Lily and Maximum. The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. Oh, but they've already been picked up. Mrs. Harrison's heart skipped a beat. Picked up? By who? A woman. She said she was sent by you. She had all the necessary paperwork. Mrs. Harrison felt her stomach drop. That's impossible. I didn't send anyone. Her voice trembled, panic creeping in. The receptionist paled. I'll call the principal immediately. As calls were made and authorities were alerted, Mrs. Harrison's mind raced. Who could have taken her children? Her thoughts spiraled into fear and confusion, and then, like a lightning strike, she remembered the incident at Steel Industries, the altercation between Kara Steele and her husband. No, she whispered, her heart pounding. At a secluded house on the outskirts of the city, Kara lounged in a chair, her lips curling into a cold smile. She sipped her wine as she glanced at her phone, where a photo of the two Harrison kids popped up on the screen. They're fine, she muttered to herself. Just a little lesson for Daddy Harrison. Kara's plan was meticulous. She had orchestrated everything to perfection, hiring someone to impersonate Mrs. Harrison, forging the paperwork, and ensuring the children were taken to a safe but isolated location. Her goal wasn't to harm them physically but to deliver a blow that would crush Mr. Harrison emotionally. He wanted to play hero, Kara muttered bitterly, swirling her glass. Now he'll know what it feels like to lose something precious. Her phone buzzed with a message from the hired driver. The kids are asking for their mother. What do we do? Kara rolled her eyes, typing back quickly, keep them quiet. Don't hurt them. I'll decide what to do next. When Mrs. Harrison called her husband in tears, he immediately dropped everything and rushed home. By the time he arrived, the house was a flurry of activity, police officers taking statements, neighbors offering support, and Mrs. Harrison sobbing uncontrollably. Harrison, she cried, running into his arms. Our babies. They're gone. He held her tightly, his mind racing. We'll find them, he assured her, though his voice betrayed his fear. Then, as the pieces began to click in his mind, his face darkened. Kara Steele. She was behind this. He was certain of it. Later that evening, Alden found Kara sitting in the garden, looking as if she hadn't a care in the world. The sight of her calm demeanor enraged him. Kara, he thundered, storming toward her. She looked up lazily. Father. What's with all the drama? Don't play games with me. Alden snapped, his face red with anger. What did you do to Mr. Harrison's children? Kara smirked, leaning back in her chair. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Alden's voice cracked with emotion. Do you realize what you've done? Those are innocent children. This isn't just your petty revenge, it's a crime. Kara's expression hardened. He humiliated me, Father. He went out of his way to paint me as a monster to you. He deserved to feel the pain he inflicted on me. Alden's hands trembled as he stared at his daughter. Pain? Kara, do you hear yourself? This isn't pain you're inflicting, it's cruelty. You're becoming someone I don't recognize. Kara stood, her eyes blazing with defiance. Don't lecture me, Father. You've always turned a blind eye to what I do. Why start now? Alden's heart broke at her words. Because I failed you, Kara, he said softly. But I won't let this go any further. You're going to fix this. Right now. She folded her arms, glaring at him. And if I don't? You'll leave me no choice but to involve the police, Alden said gravely, his voice filled with resolve. This isn't a game anymore, Kara. You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. For a moment, Kara hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. But her stubborn pride wouldn't let her back down so easily. This isn't over, she said coldly before storming away, leaving Alden standing in the garden, a broken man desperately trying to save his daughter from herself. The air in Alden Steele's office was thick with tension. Harrison stormed in, his face flushed with anger, his voice booming. You think this is acceptable, Alden? Harrison roared, slamming his fists on the desk. My children are missing because of your daughter's sick games. Alden stood behind his desk, his usually calm demeanor faltering. Harrison, I understand how this looks. How this looks? Harrison cut him off, his eyes blazing. Kara didn't just cross a line, she obliterated it. You pampered her for years, and now, she's putting innocent lives at risk. My children, Alden. My children. Alden held up his hands. I swear to you, I'll fix this. I'll find them. You'd better, Harrison hissed, his voice trembling. Because if anything happens to Lily or Max, our friendship is over. And your reputation? It'll be in shambles. As soon as Harrison stormed out, Alden called his chief of security. Lucas, I need every available man on this now, Alden ordered, his voice steely. Check every property, every warehouse, every corner of this city. Find those kids, Lucas. And bring them back safely. Yes, sir, Lucas replied, already moving to mobilize his team. Alden sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. He had always known Kara was troubled, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. In an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, Lily and Max huddled together on a dusty mattress. The hired goons Kara had employed loitered nearby, occasionally glancing at their phones. "I want to go home," Lily whispered, clutching her brother. "Me too," Max said, his voice trembling. "Do you think Mom and Dad will find us?" "They will," Lily said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "They always do." A few hours later, Alden's team stormed the building. The goons barely had time to react before they were overpowered. Lucas led the way, finding the children in a dimly lit room. "It's okay," Lucas said gently, kneeling before them. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." Lily burst into tears, and Max clung to Lucas, their relief palpable. By the time Alden arrived at the Harrison residence with the children, the atmosphere was a mix of relief and tension. Mrs. Harrison rushed to embrace Lily and Max, tears streaming down her face. "My babies," she cried, holding them close. "I thought I'd never see you again." Harrison stood a few steps away, his arms crossed, his face hard as stone. "Thank you," Mrs. Harrison said to Alden, her voice choked with emotion. Alden nodded, then turned to Harrison. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "This never should have happened. I'll make sure Kara never pulls a stunt like this again." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "It's not about what you'll make sure of, Alden. It's about what you've allowed. You've let Kara's behavior spiral out of control, and now innocent people are suffering." "I know," Alden admitted, his voice cracking. "I was blind to it, Harrison. I thought I was protecting her, but I see now I was only enabling her. Please, give me a chance to make this right." Harrison sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I want to believe you, Alden. But my family comes first. If Kara ever comes near them again, I won't be so forgiving." When Alden returned home, Kara was waiting in the living room, lounging on the couch as if nothing had happened. "I see you found the brats," she said nonchalantly. Alden's patience snapped. "Kara," he thundered, his voice echoing through the house. She flinched but quickly masked it with a smirk. "What? They're fine, aren't they? They could have been hurt." Alden shouted, his face red with anger. "Do you even understand what you've done? You kidnapped children, Kara. You endangered lives." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. I just wanted to teach Mr. Perfect a lesson. This isn't a game, Kara." Alden snapped. "Do you realize how close I came to losing a lifelong friend because of your actions? How close you came to ruining innocent lives?" Kara's smirk faltered, but she quickly replaced it with defiance. "Maybe if you weren't always siding with your precious friends, you'd understand what it's like to feel betrayed." Alden stared at her, his heart breaking. "I've failed you," he said quietly. "I've let my love blind me to the damage you're causing, to yourself and to everyone around you. But this ends now, Kara. You're going to therapy, and you're going to face the consequences of your actions." "Therapy?" Kara sneered. "You can't be serious. Do I look sick to you? Have you taken time to understand me and my feelings even for once?" "I am very much okay, Dad. I don't need therapy. I think you have other things to worry about apart from my actions." Kara said. "I've never been more serious," Alden said firmly. "You need help, Kara. And I'm going to make sure you get it, even if it means you hate me for the rest of your life." For the first time, Kara didn't have a retort. She simply stared at her father, the weight of his words sinking in. But whether they would change her remained to be seen. The Steele mansion was unusually quiet that morning. Alden sat in his study, nursing a cup of coffee and reflecting on the past few days. Kara had been confined to her room, a punishment he hoped would give her time to reflect on her actions. It was a fragile peace, but one Alden clung to. That is, until the sound of knocking echoed through the halls. The butler, Henry, opened the door, only to reveal two uniformed police officers. "Good morning," one officer said, his tone firm but respectful. "We're here to speak with Kara Steele." Alden stood, alarm flashing across his face as he stepped into the foyer. "What is the meaning of this?" The lead officer adjusted his hat. Mr. Steele, we have a report filed against Kara Steele regarding the abduction of 2 minors, Lily and Max Harrison. We're here to take her into custody for questioning. Alden's chest tightened. This must be a mistake, he said, his voice tinged with desperation. I've already handled the matter with Mr. Harrison. He assured me that he would let my daughter go this time and that I would discipline her accordingly. Why would he go back on his word? Alden wondered. It isn't Mr. Harrison, sir. His wife, Mrs. Harrison, filed the report, the officer interjected. I'm sorry, sir, but this is out of your hands now. Kara! Alden called, his voice echoing through the mansion. Kara descended the stairs slowly, her expression a mix of defiance and confusion. What's with all the commotion? She asked, her gaze landing on the officers. They're here for you, Alden said, his tone heavy with regret. For me? Kara smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. What could they possibly want? The officer stepped forward. Miss Steele, you're under arrest for the abduction of Lily and Max Harrison. You have the right to remain silent. What? Kara's voice rose, her composure cracking. This is ridiculous. I didn't hurt them. They were fine. But that doesn't change the fact that you went against the law. Kidnapping is punishable by law. Alden raised a hand. Kara, stop. Dad, you're just going to let them take me, she snapped, panic seeping into her voice. I can't protect you from this, Kara, Alden said softly. You brought this on yourself. At the Harrison residence, the atmosphere was tense. Lily and Max played quietly in the living room, their parents seated nearby. I told you filing that report was the right thing to do, Mrs. Harrison said, her voice firm. Harrison sighed, running a hand through his hair. I wanted to let it go, Sarah. For Alden's sake. For Alden's sake. Sarah snapped. What about our children? What about the trauma they endured? Kara has to face the consequences, Harrison. No one's above the law, not even her. Harrison nodded reluctantly. I just hope this doesn't destroy what's left of my friendship with Alden. Kara sat in the interrogation room, her hands cuffed and her expression sullen. Across from her, a stern-faced detective reviewed the case file. This isn't a game, Miss Steele, he said, setting the file down. You orchestrated the abduction of 2 children. That's a serious crime. They're fine, Kara muttered, glaring at the table. No harm done. No harm done, the detective repeated, his voice sharp. Do you have any idea what you put those kids through? Or their parents? Kara's defiance faltered, but she quickly masked it with a shrug. I didn't mean for it to go that far. That doesn't matter, the detective said. Intent doesn't erase consequences. Back at the station, Alden arrived, his face pale and drawn. He requested to see Kara, and after some hesitation, the officers allowed it. He entered the room. Kara looked up, her eyes widening briefly before she masked her emotions. Come to lecture me again, she asked bitterly. No, Alden said, sitting across from her. I came to tell you that I'm not giving up on you. Kara scoffed. Doesn't seem like it. You didn't even try to stop them. I couldn't stop them, Alden said, his voice filled with sorrow. Kara, I've protected you for so long, but it's clear now that I was doing more harm than good. You need to face the consequences of your actions. You don't get it, Kara said, her voice trembling. Everyone just hates me. No one understands what I've been through. Alden leaned forward, his eyes softening. Then help me understand, Kara. Let me in. I love you, and I want to help you. But you have to meet me halfway. Kara's therapy sessions were a glimmer of hope for Alden. For weeks, he saw the fire in his daughter's eyes dim into something softer. She was learning to manage her emotions and unpack the pain buried deep within her, but progress is fragile, and wounds that haven't fully healed can be easily reopened. Kara walked into her father's company that afternoon, her head held high. She had come to pick up some documents Alden had asked her to deliver. Therapy had taught her to face the world with grace, but the scars of her past still lingered, hidden beneath the surface. As she passed a break room, the sound of hushed laughter and whispers caught her attention. Curious, she paused by the door, only to hear her name. She thinks she's better now because she's seeing a therapist, one woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Therapy won't fix crazy, another chimed in. She's a ticking time bomb. Poor Mr. Steele must be exhausted with her antics. Can you blame him? She's a lunatic. No wonder she doesn't have friends. Who'd want to be around someone like that? Kara's heart pounded. She clenched her fists, trying to hold back the fury building inside her. Ignore it. Walk away, she told herself, repeating the mantra her therapist had taught her. But the words cut too deep, each one chipping away at the fragile wall she had built. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the room. Care to say that to my face? She asked, her voice sharp as glass. The women turned, startled. One of them, a confident young woman named Trina, smirked. Oh, look! The princess has arrived. Did you hear everything, or should we repeat it louder? Kara's jaw tightened. You think you're funny? No, but I think I'm honest, Trina said, crossing her arms. Everyone knows the truth, Kara. You're a spoiled, angry brat who lashes out because you can't handle the fact that no one wants you. The room fell silent. Kara felt as if the air had been S**ck*D out, leaving her chest hollow. What did you just say? She whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. You heard me, Trina said, stepping closer. No one likes you. Not your so-called friends, not your family. You're just an unwanted kid who takes out her anger on everyone else. Maybe it's time you looked in the mirror and realized the problem is you. Something inside Kara snapped. Her vision blurred, and the next thing she knew, she was on Trina, her nails scratching across her face. You don't get to talk about me like that. Kara screamed, her voice raw with fury. Trina tried to push her off, but Kara was relentless. The other women in the room froze in shock, unsure of how to intervene. Trina managed to shove Kara back and swung at her, but Kara dodged and shoved her hard. Trina stumbled, her heels slipping on the polished floor, and before anyone could react, she fell backward. The sound of her body hitting the stairs was deafening. She rolled down, landing in a crumpled heap at the bottom. Kara, what have you done? One of the women whispered, her voice shaking. The police were called immediately, and Kara, still seething and shaking, was taken into custody. Alden arrived at the station shortly after, his face pale and his hands trembling. Kara, what happened? He demanded, his voice filled with desperation. She called me unwanted, Kara said flatly, staring at the floor. She said no one likes me. She deserved it. Kara, this has to stop, Alden said, his voice breaking. I've tried to protect you, to help you. But you're spiraling, and I don't know how to save you anymore. Alden was really broken this time around. You think I wanted this? Kara snapped, looking up with tears streaming down her face. Do you think I asked to feel this way? To be this monster? Alden's heart ached as he watched his daughter break down in front of him. He wanted to hug her, to tell her it would be okay. But he also knew that words wouldn't be enough anymore. Later that evening, as Alden sat in his study, the weight of the situation bore down on him. Trina was in the hospital, unconscious but stable. The news was already spreading, and Alden knew the damage to his company's reputation would be severe. Harrison called, his voice heavy with disappointment. Alden, this can't go on, he said. I've been your friend for years, but Kara is dangerous. She needs help, real help. I know, Alden said, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to do anymore, Harrison. I feel like I'm losing her. Then fight for her, Harrison said. But don't enable her. She needs to face the consequences of her actions, no matter how much it hurts. Alden nodded silently, a tear slipping down his cheek. He knew Harrison was right. Kara needed more than his love, she needed accountability. The hospital room was dimly lit, with the steady beep of the heart monitor breaking the silence. Trina lay unconscious, her face pale, bruised, and bandaged. Her mother sat by her side, clutching her hand, tears streaming down her face. Why did this have to happen to my baby? She sobbed, her voice cracking. Across town, Trina's father, Malcolm, saw the situation through a different lens. To him, this wasn't just a tragedy, it was an opportunity. Malcolm barged into Alden Steele's office unannounced, his face a mixture of smugness and feigned outrage. "Alden, we need to talk," Malcolm said, slamming the door behind him. Alden looked up from his desk, his tired eyes narrowing. "Malcolm, this isn't the time. Your daughter is in the hospital, and I'm doing everything I can to address the situation." "Address the situation?" Malcolm scoffed, leaning forward. "Your monster of a daughter put Trina in the hospital. My little girl might never recover from this, and you're sitting here acting like it's just another problem on your desk." "I understand you're upset," Alden said, his voice calm but firm. "And I deeply regret what happened. I've already spoken with the doctors and assured your family that we'll cover all medical expenses." "Medical expenses?" Malcolm sneered. "You think paying a hospital bill is enough? My daughter's life is ruined because of Kara. Do you know what people are saying? That your precious company harbors dangerous individuals. If you don't handle this right, Alden, your entire empire will crumble." Alden's jaw tightened. "What exactly are you asking for, Malcolm?" Malcolm leaned back, a sly grin spreading across his face. "Compensation. A significant sum to make this right. Let's say $5 million. That should be enough to cover the emotional distress, the medical bills, and, of course, the silence of my family." Alden stared at Malcolm, his expression unreadable. "So, this isn't about justice for your daughter. This is about greed." "Call it what you want," Malcolm said with a shrug. "But you and I both know how bad this could look for you. The media loves a scandal, Alden. And a story about a billionaire's out-of-control daughter putting an innocent young woman in the hospital. That's a headline that'll sell. You'd exploit your own daughter's pain for money." Alden asked, his voice laced with disgust. "Don't act so high and mighty," Malcolm shot back. "You do whatever it takes to protect Kara, wouldn't you?" "Well, I'm just doing what I need to do to protect my family." Alden took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew Malcolm was right about one thing: the story could ruin his company's reputation. But giving in to blackmail wasn't a solution, it was a trap. "Malcolm, I'll make sure your family is taken care of," Alden said carefully. "But I won't be bullied into paying you an exorbitant sum. I'm already handling Trina's medical bills, and I'll provide additional support to ensure she gets the best care possible." "But $5 million? That's not happening." Malcolm's eyes darkened. "You're making a big mistake, Alden. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." "Do what you feel is necessary," Alden said, standing. "But let me remind you, dragging this into the public won't just hurt me, it'll hurt your family, too. Think carefully about what you're risking." Malcolm stormed out of Alden's office, furious. At the hospital, he found his wife still by Trina's bedside. "What did you do, Malcolm?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I did what any good father would do," he replied, his tone defensive. "I demanded justice." "Justice?" she snapped. "Or money? You're always looking for the next payday, even when our daughter is lying in a hospital bed." "You don't understand," Malcolm said. "This is our chance to finally get ahead. To give Trina the life she deserves. She deserves her father to care about her, not his wallet," his wife retorted, turning away. Back in the expansive corner office of Steele Enterprises, Alden leaned back in his leather chair, deep in thought. The confrontation with Malcolm had rattled him, but Alden knew this wasn't the time to falter. His company's reputation, his family's name, and Kara's future were all at stake. He picked up the phone and dialed the head of his legal team, Margaret Lane, a no-nonsense attorney known for her sharp instincts and impeccable track record. "Margaret," Alden said as soon as she picked up, "we have a situation. I need you in my office immediately." "I'll be there in 10, Margaret replied without hesitation. True to her word, she arrived swiftly, a leather briefcase in hand and a determined look on her face. Alden quickly outlined the incident with Kara and Trina, Malcolm's demands, and the potential risks to the company. Margaret took meticulous notes, her pen moving swiftly across the notepad. "We need to approach this from multiple angles," she said. "First, we'll ensure full cooperation with the authorities regarding the incident. Transparency is key to minimizing public backlash. Second, I'll draft a settlement offer for Trina's family, one that's reasonable but doesn't set a precedent for extortion. It was way too much. Alden nodded. And Malcolm? He's volatile. What if he takes this to the media? Sitting on the cold, hard bench at the police station, Kara wrapped her arms tightly around herself. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting an eerie glow on her face. For the first time in years, her defiant mask slipped, and a wave of memories broke through the barriers she had spent years building. She closed her eyes, and her mind drifted back to a simpler time, before the anger, the pain, and the chaos. Kara and her twin brother, Ethan, had lived a life most kids only dreamed of. Their parents, Janet and Richard, were the epitome of love and dedication. The two worked tirelessly but always found time for family. Their modest home was a haven of warmth and joy. It was the envy of many. She remembered their laughter-filled mornings as Richard cooked breakfast, his pancakes shaped like animals, and Janet hummed while setting the table. Their parents made everything feel magical, every moment, every celebration, every ordinary day. Ethan was her best friend, her partner in every game and mischief. Together, they built pillow forts, raced bicycles, and dreamed of conquering the world. Their bond was unbreakable, their family invincible, or so she had believed. Kara's heart clenched as the memories shifted. That fateful day was as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. She and Ethan were at kindergarten, giggling over crayons and sharing snacks, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding miles away. The fire had started in the middle of the day, engulfing their home in a matter of minutes. The news reached the school quickly. Teachers whispered in hushed tones, their faces pale as they glanced at Kara and Ethan. She remembered how Mrs. Nolan, their favorite teacher, knelt in front of them, tears streaming down her face. "Kara, Ethan, sweethearts," she said, her voice trembling. "There's been an accident. Your mommy and daddy, they're not coming back." Kara didn't understand at first. "Not coming back," she repeated, her small voice filled with confusion. Ethan, ever the protector, grabbed her hand. "What does she mean, Kara?" But the whispers around them, the pitying looks from other kids, and the hushed sobs of teachers painted a grim picture. The weight of realization crushed them, and they ran. They ran out of the classroom, out of the school, out into the streets, their tiny legs carrying them far from the pitying gazes and cruel whispers. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartbreak. Other children, unable to comprehend the gravity of the tragedy, taunted them. "Orphans," one boy sneered. "No one wants you now. You're going to live on the streets," another chimed in, his laughter cutting like a knife. The words echoed in Kara's mind even now, years later. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she sat in the police station that day at the school, unable to bear the mocking. She and Ethan had fled. They didn't know where they were going, only that they wanted to be far away. They clung to each other as they wandered the streets, hungry, cold, and scared. Kara's heart ached as she remembered Ethan's words that night, as they huddled under a bridge for warmth. "I'll take care of you, Kara," he had whispered, his voice trembling but determined. "I promise." Kara and Ethan raced through the streets, their small legs burning with the effort to reach home. The world around them blurred as their tiny hearts clung to the fragile hope that what they'd heard was a cruel mistake. Maybe Mrs. Nolan had been wrong. Maybe their parents were safe, waiting for them with open arms and warm smiles. But as they turned the final corner and their house came into view, their steps faltered. What was once a proud, beautiful home, painted a cheery yellow, surrounded by a lush garden, was now a smoldering ruin. Smoke curled up into the evening sky, dark and foreboding. The familiar scent of home had been replaced by the acrid stench of burnt wood and despair. "Mommy? Daddy?" Kara's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with fear and denial. Ethan tugged on her hand. "They're here somewhere," he said, his voice strained as if trying to convince himself. "Maybe they're hiding." The twins stumbled through the charred remains, their shoes crunching on soot and debris. Kara's eyes darted around, searching for anything that could reassure her this wasn't real. The dining table where they once shared meals was nothing but a pile of ashes. The piano their mother played every evening was a blackened skeleton of its former self. "Mom!" Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. "Dad! Where are you?" They found nothing. Not their parents. not the workers who had always bustled around the house. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional crackle of the dying embers. Kara's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, tears streaming down her soot-streaked cheeks. "They're gone," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're really gone." Ethan dropped beside her, his small hands trembling as he wrapped them around her. "No," he said, shaking his head furiously. "They'll come back. They have to. They wouldn't leave us." As the sun dipped below the horizon, neighbors began to gather at a distance, whispering among themselves. Kara could hear their murmurs, each word cutting through her like a blade. "Poor kids," one woman said, her tone dripping with pity. "They're orphans now," a man added, his voice tinged with something cruel. Another voice chimed in, louder, meant to be overheard. "It's their fault for being rich and flaunting it. Maybe this is karma." Kara clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as fresh tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to scream at them, to make them stop. But her voice failed her, choked by grief and exhaustion, when some children from the neighborhood began pointing and laughing, mocking their soot-streaked faces and tear-stained cheeks. Ethan stood up, his small frame shaking with fury. "Stop it," he yelled, his voice echoing in the cold night air. "Leave us alone." The children only laughed harder, and their parents did nothing to intervene. As night fell, the temperature dropped, and the stinging cold bit through their thin clothes. The twins huddled together amidst the ruins, their only source of warmth each other. Kara leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, her sobs finally subsiding into quiet whimpers. "What are we going to do now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Ethan swallowed hard, his young face set with determination. "I'll take care of you," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "I promise, Kara. I won't let anything happen to you." They stayed like that, clinging to each other as the hours dragged on. The ruins of their home, once a sanctuary of love and joy, now felt like a graveyard for their happiness. The laughter and whispers of the neighbors faded into the cold night as Kara and Ethan sat in the ruins of their once happy home. The realization that no one cared enough to help them hit harder than the biting wind. They had no family to turn to, and no friends were willing to shelter them. Ethan stood, brushing soot from his trousers. "We can't stay here, Kara," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "No one's coming for us." Kara, her cheeks streaked with dried tears, looked up at him. "Where will we go?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "Anywhere," Ethan replied, offering his hand to help her up. "We'll find somewhere. We have to." The two children began walking, their feet shuffling along the dark streets of their once familiar neighborhood. Every step was heavy with exhaustion and hunger. Kara leaned on Ethan, her strength fading with each passing minute. "Ethan," she whispered after a while, her voice weak, "I'm so tired." "I know," he said, his tone soft but firm. "Just a little further, Kara. We'll find food and a place to rest." But the streets were empty, and the world seemed indifferent to their plight. Hours passed, and their small legs began to falter. The city lights blurred into the distance as the cold seeped into their bones. Suddenly, Kara stumbled, her knees buckling beneath her. Ethan caught her just in time, lowering her gently to the ground. "Kara," he cried, shaking her lightly. Her eyes fluttered open but quickly closed again. Panicking, Ethan remembered the stale bun he had found earlier that day, discarded near a trash pit. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. He splashed water from a nearby puddle onto her face, willing her to wake up. "Come on, Kara," he murmured. "You can't leave me. I need you." Her eyes opened slowly, and he smiled with relief. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the crumpled bun and handed it to her. "Eat this," he said, his voice firm. "What about you?" she asked weakly. "I'm not hungry," Ethan lied, his stomach growling audibly. Kara hesitated but took the bun. She nibbled at it, her tears falling with each bite. Ethan watched her, his heart breaking but resolute in his decision. He was the older one, and it was his job to protect her. The night grew colder, and the siblings' exhaustion overtook them. They found themselves on the edge of a quiet tarmac road, their legs unable to carry them further. "Let's rest here," Ethan said, sitting down and pulling Kara close to him. "But it's so cold," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "I'll keep you warm," Ethan promised, wrapping his small arms around her. The hard surface of the road offered no comfort, but their fatigue left them no choice. As they drifted off to sleep, Kara nestled against Ethan, her faith in her brother unshaken despite their dire circumstances. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a pale glow on the two children huddled together on the tarmac. A passing car slowed, the driver noticing the tiny figures lying on the side of the road. The man stepped out, his face a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Kids," he called out, his voice echoing in the still morning air. Ethan stirred, his eyes blinking against the light. He sat up, shielding Kara with his body as the man approached. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. "I'm here to help," the man said gently, kneeling down. "What happened to you two?" Ethan hesitated, his protective instincts kicking in. But the man's kind eyes and soft tone reassured him. "Our home burned down," Ethan said quietly. "We don't have anyone left." The man nodded solemnly, pulling out his phone. "Let's get you both some help," he said. As Kara stirred awake, she clung to Ethan, her small fingers clutching his shirt. They didn't know where they were going or what would happen next, but for the first time in what felt like forever, they weren't alone. As the man prepared to make a call, a sleek black car pulled up beside them, its engine purring softly. The car door opened, and a tall, distinguished man stepped out. His eyes scanned the scene, landing on the two frail children huddled together on the tarmac. "Alden," the man exclaimed, his voice tinged with relief. "You're here." Alden, a man of wealth and influence, glanced at the man briefly before his gaze softened on the children. His expression, usually stern and unreadable, changed to one of concern and determination. "These are the kids?" he asked quietly. "Yes," the man replied. "They've been through a lot." Alden approached slowly, crouching to meet their eyes. His tailored suit contrasted sharply with the dirty, torn clothes of the children before him. "What's your name, son?" Alden asked gently. "Ethan," the boy replied, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "And your sister?" Alden glanced at the little girl clinging to Ethan's arm. "Kara," Ethan said, his arm tightening protectively around her. Alden nodded, his expression unreadable. "You two look like you've had a rough night. How about you come with me? I'll make sure you're safe, and you'll get something to eat." Ethan hesitated, his small face scrunching up with doubt. "Why would you help us? Nobody else did." Alden's jaw tightened at the boy's words, but he softened his tone. "Because I can. And because no child should have to go through this alone." The car ride was quiet, except for Kara's occasional sniffles. Ethan kept a wary eye on Alden, unsure whether to trust the man who seemed so confident and composed. When they arrived at Alden's grand estate, the children's eyes widened in awe. The mansion stood tall and imposing, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens and fountains. It was a far cry from the cold, unforgiving streets they had just left behind. Inside, the warmth of the house enveloped them. A kind-looking woman appeared, her apron dusted with flour. "Mr. Alden, who are these little ones?" she asked, her eyes kind. "Guests," Alden replied. "Make sure they get cleaned up and have something to eat." The woman nodded, leading the children to a guest room. Ethan held Kara's hand tightly, unwilling to let go. Later that evening, after the children had bathed and eaten their first warm meal in days, Alden sat with them in the cozy living room. "You two have been through a lot," he began, his tone measured. "But you're safe now. I'll make sure you have everything you need." Kara, sitting quietly beside Ethan, looked up with wide eyes. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care?" Alden leaned forward, his expression softening. "Because sometimes life takes things away from us that we don't deserve to lose. But it also gives us opportunities to start again. I want to give you that chance." Ethan looked at his sister, then back at Alden. "We don't need pity," he said firmly. "It's not pity," Alden assured him. "It's a second chance." Kara's thoughts swirled, the haunting images of her childhood refusing to fade. The desolation of sitting with Ethan in the charred ruins of their home, the endless mocking laughter of people, and the aching cold of the streets, all played on a cruel loop in her mind. Tears streamed down her cheeks, silent witnesses to her pain. Her heart ached for the life she once knew, for the family she lost, and for Ethan, who had been her only anchor through the storm. "Get a grip." The sharp, biting voice of Malcolm cut through her haze. She barely had time to register the sound before a stinging slap landed across her cheek, snapping her head to the side. The harsh fluorescent lights of the convenience store buzzed a stark counterpoint to the swirling storm in Kara's mind. Reality crashed back, cold and unforgiving, leaving the fragile remnants of her fleeting happiness shattered. Alden's face, etched with a weary kindness she'd so carelessly disregarded, swam before her eyes. His love, a warm sun that had once nurtured her and her brother, now felt like a searing guilt. She saw herself reflected in the chipped glass of a discarded soda bottle, a nuisance, a parasite clinging to his generosity. Tears pricked at her eyes, a bitter mix of remorse and resentment. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, each hurtful word, each violent act a leaden stone in her chest. Regret gnawed at her, a relentless beast, but it was a fragile creature, constantly battling another, far stronger, the burning shame of being insulted, of being weak, that searing humiliation, that visceral fear of being vulnerable, always won. It was a vicious cycle, a cruel dance between her guilt and her anger. The memory of the taunts, the whispers, the sneers, rose like phantoms, their icy breath chilling her to the bone. Reason, logic, the gentle voice of Alden's compassion, all were drowned out by the deafening roar of her rage. Violence, she'd convinced herself, was the only answer. Power was the only shield. Untouchable, feared, these were not just ambitions, but desperate prayers whispered in the dark, a twisted plea for safety in a world that had made her feel so utterly unsafe. The satisfaction she craved wasn't the thrill of victory, but the chilling certainty of being beyond reach. It was the illusion of control, a fragile fortress built on the shaky foundation of intimidation. It was a desperate attempt to fill the empty space within her, the hollowness born of the fear she'd so desperately tried to bury beneath layers of aggression. Each blow she landed, each cowering victim, was a desperate affirmation that she was not weak, that she could, somehow, conquer the terror that haunted her. But deep down, she knew that the only person she was truly hurting was herself. And the gentle ghost of Alden's love, a flickering candle in the storm, offered the only glimmer of a different path, a path she was too terrified to take. Watched her from across the dimly lit room. He knew the storm brewing within her, he'd seen its tempestuous flashes before. He'd witnessed the impulsive brushstrokes on her canvases, mirroring the turbulent tides of her emotions, and sensed the silent screams trapped behind her forced smiles. He didn't pry, understanding that some wounds needed time, their own pace to heal, yet the sight of her quiet despair tore at him. He saw her flinch, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor that spoke volumes, and he knew the past had once again claimed her. He saw Alden staring at her. He did not know what she was thinking about, but he knew it must have something to do with her past. He never wanted her memory to go back there, but there was nothing he could do right now. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until Kara abruptly stood, her movements jerky, almost desperate. The fragile serenity of the room shattered as she rushed towards him, her body trembling. He stood, his arms instinctively opening to receive her. The hug was a violent release, a torrent of pent-up emotions finally unleashed. Her sobs racked her body, each one a testament to the battles fought and lost within her heart. "I'm sorry, Dad," she choked out, her voice thick with tears. "I never meant to disappoint you this much." The words were laced with genuine remorse, a stark contrast to the defiant, almost reckless spirit he'd seen only moments before. He held her tight, the familiar scent of her lavender perfume momentarily soothing the turmoil in his soul. He understood now, the past hadn't simply visited her, it had possessed her, whispering its venomous lies. Alden stroked her hair, murmuring words of comfort and forgiveness. He knew this wasn't the end of her struggle, the road to healing was long and arduous. But tonight, in the quiet embrace of a loving father, Kara found solace. The weight of her past, for this moment, felt a little lighter. He wouldn't pry, he wouldn't push. He'd simply be there, a beacon of unwavering love in her turbulent sea, a silent testament to the enduring power of a father's acceptance, a love that transcended any mistake, any fall, any painful echo of the past. The hug remained, a silent promise of enduring support, a shared understanding that tomorrow, they would face the storm together. Alden could not bear seeing Kara in prison. He'd brought her to his secluded lakeside house, a haven of calm and quiet, far removed from the clamor of the city. He even secured her a therapist, Dr. Aries, a woman known for her gentle but firm approach to trauma. Kara had poured out her heart during their sessions, detailing the events that landed her in prison, the betrayals, the desperation, and the overwhelming weight of guilt. After a tense but ultimately productive meeting with her estranged father, she felt a shift, a sense of reconciliation that promised closure. Yet, the peace Alden had meticulously constructed crumbled under the weight of one brutal restriction: she wasn't allowed to leave the house. The initial days had been filled with fragile optimism. Kara found solace in the sun-drenched rooms, the rhythmic lapping of the lake against the shore, and the gentle encouragement of her therapist. But the constant confinement gnawed at her. The promise of freedom, the chance to rebuild her life, felt increasingly distant, replaced by the suffocating reality of her gilded cage. She'd tentatively broached the subject with Alden, expecting a reasonable explanation, perhaps a gradual reintegration into society. Instead, he offered only vague reassurances and worried glances, his usually calm demeanor replaced by a disquieting anxiety. His explanation was a veiled threat concerning those who still held a grudge, which only deepened her growing unease. The walls of his beautiful home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison with a softer exterior. Then, during a session with Dr. Aries, the truth unraveled. Alden did not allow Kara to leave the house. She was beginning to change, but his determination to keep her locked in increased her frustration. She started planning an escape from home without anyone finding out. Desperate for freedom, Kara hatched a daring escape plan. She befriended one of the security guards, Marius 40s, burdened by debt, easily swayed by promises, whispering tales of a life beyond the walls and a hefty reward, a sum large enough to erase his financial woes. Marius, initially hesitant, succumbed to the allure of the money, agreeing to help Kara escape when Mr. Alden was away on a business trip. Kara meticulously detailed the escape route, involving a hidden passage behind a bookshelf leading to a rarely used service exit the night of the escape arrived. Marius, holding a coded card Kara claimed contained their escape fund, followed Kara's instructions precisely. They slipped through the hidden passage, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. They reached the service exit, only for Marius to discover the bitter truth. The card, a meticulously crafted forgery meant to access a prearranged bank account, was locked. The account, Kara explained, was to be activated only after their successful rendezvous point. A wave of rage washed over Marius. He saw himself betrayed, the promised wealth a cruel deception. His frustration boiled over, morphing into blind fury. He lunged at Kara, ready to silence her permanently, his fists clenched, but just as Marius's fist connected with the air, a chorus of shouts erupted. Other estate workers, alerted by the unusual commotion near the service exit, intervened. They pulled Marius away from Kara, subduing him before he could inflict harm. The workers, seeing Kara's distress and the situation's absurdity, immediately called Mr. Alden, whose return was far earlier than expected. Mr. Alden arrived at the chaos, his face a mask of cold fury. The air suddenly turned cold on his arrival. Everyone knew things had boiled up. Kara, though terrified, she had never seen her father that scarily. Alden sat in his study, his fingers drumming rhythmically against the polished wooden desk. His expression was unreadable, but his thoughts were turbulent. The events of the past few days had left a bitter taste in his mouth. Kara had crossed the line, and it was time she understood the gravity of her actions. He picked up his phone and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, and then went to voicemail. Alden sighed in frustration. He wasn't the type to chase after anyone, not even his own daughter. With a determined expression, he called for one of his attendants. "Tell Kara to come to my study immediately," he instructed. "Yes, sir," the attendant said with a slight bow before hurrying off. Minutes later, the young man returned, his face hesitant. "Sir, Miss Kara said she's busy and doesn't have time for a lecture." Alden's jaw tightened. Kara was testing his patience. He rose from his chair, smoothing out the creases in his suit, and walked toward the grand staircase. If she refused to come to him, he would go to her. As he reached her room, he found the door slightly ajar. He pushed it open without knocking. Kara was lounging on her bed, scrolling through her phone with her earphones in, deliberately ignoring his presence. "Kara," he said sternly. She didn't even look up. "Kara." His voice was sharper this time. She let out an exaggerated sigh and removed one earphone. "What now, father? If you're here to give me another lecture, save it. I already know what you're going to say." Alden crossed the room with slow, deliberate steps. "Oh?" Enlighten me, then. What exactly do you think I'm going to say? Kara smirked, swinging her legs off the bed. That I messed up. That I should apologize to Aiden and Harrison. That I need to stop acting out and behave like the daughter of Alden Blackwell. Did I miss anything? Alden watched her carefully, noting the defiance in her eyes. He had always known Kara to be headstrong, but this wasn't just stubbornness, this was her way of rebelling. You missed one thing, he said coolly. Oh. She arched a brow. You need to understand that your actions have consequences, and you don't get to walk away from this without accountability. Kara rolled her eyes. Consequences? Please? What are you going to do? Cut me off? Take away my credit cards? Lock me in my room like a child? Alden's lips pressed into a thin line. Do you honestly think this is about money? She scoffed. Isn't everything in this house about money and power? Alden exhaled slowly, reining in his temper. You are playing a dangerous game, Kara. You don't just risk hurting Aiden and Harrison, you're putting yourself in harm's way. Do you think I don't know about the people you've been associating with? Kara's expression faltered slightly, but she quickly masked it. I have no idea what you're talking about. Alden leaned in, his voice low and firm. Then let me spell it out for you. I know about your meetings, the alliances you're trying to form behind my back. You're not as discreet as you think you are. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Kara's eyes. She shifted uncomfortably but forced herself to keep a composed front. You're being paranoid. Alden straightened, looking down at her with disappointment. You forget, Kara, that I built this empire by staying 5 steps ahead of everyone. Did you really think I wouldn't notice my own daughter plotting behind my back? Kara's hands curled into fists. I'm not a child, father. I can make my own decisions. Alden's eyes darkened. Then start making better ones. A heavy silence fell between them. Kara wanted to lash out, to tell him he was wrong, that she had everything under control, but a part of her knew he was right. She had pushed too far, and now the walls were closing in. Alden sighed, running a hand over his temple. I'm giving you one chance, Kara. Fix this mess before it's too late. Because if you don't, I won't be the one cleaning it up for you. Kara swallowed, her bravado slipping just a little. And if I don't? Alden's expression hardened. Then you'll have to face what's coming on your own. Without another word, he turned and left the room, leaving Kara sitting on the edge of her bed, her mind racing. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt before, fear. Kara sat frozen on the edge of her bed, her father's words echoing in her mind. Then you'll have to face what's coming on your own. Alden Blackwell had always been a man of control and precision. He rarely made empty threats. If he said she'd have to deal with the consequences alone, he meant it. Her grip on her phone tightened as a sinking feeling settled in her stomach. What if she really had pushed too far this time? But then, she shook her head, pushing the thought away. No. He's just trying to scare me. He always does this. He thinks he can control me just like he controls everything else. With a deep breath, she forced herself to stay composed. She wouldn't let him see her crack. Just as she was about to put her earphones back in, her phone vibrated in her hand. A message popped up on the screen. Unknown number, you're playing a dangerous game, sweetheart. Be careful where you step. Kara's breath hitched. She sat up straight, reading the message over and over again. Who the hell is this? She thought, quickly typing a response. Kara, who is this? No reply. She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. The message wasn't from her father. He wouldn't resort to anonymous threats. No, this was someone else, someone who knew exactly what she was up to. A knock on her door made her flinch. Miss Kara, came the hesitant voice of one of the house attendants. Your father is leaving for an important meeting. He said to remind you that you're expected at the family dinner tonight. Kara clenched her jaw. Family dinners were never just about food. They were strategic meetings disguised as casual gatherings, where her father sized everyone up, measured their loyalty, and dictated the unspoken rules of the Blackwell dynasty. She hated them. Tell him I'll think about it, she said coldly. The attendant hesitated. He said it wasn't a request. Kara rolled her eyes. Of course, he did. She heard the attendant's footsteps fade down the hallway as she stared at her phone again. She knew she had to be careful now. If her father was already watching her movements, and someone else had noticed too, then she wasn't just walking a fine line, she was running straight into the fire. Still, she wasn't about to back down. Kara Blackwell had never been one to play by the rules. That evening, Kara arrived late to the family dinner, making sure everyone noticed. The dining room was as grand as ever, the long table adorned with crystal glasses, silverware that gleamed under the chandelier, and a feast fit for royalty. Alden sat at the head of the table, speaking in low, measured tones to a few business associates he had invited. Harrison and Aidan were both present, but they barely acknowledged her when she walked in. They were still furious about what she had done. She didn't care. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Kara, Alden said, his voice firm but controlled. You're late. She shrugged, sliding into her seat. I didn't realize we were on a strict schedule. Alden exhaled through his nose, but he didn't take the bait. Instead, he gestured toward the untouched food in front of her. Eat. Kara smirked. Ordering me around now? Her father's eyes darkened. I suggest you tread carefully, Kara. You're already on thin ice. Aidan cleared his throat, finally speaking. I'd say she already fell through. His voice was cold. Kara rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Can we stop acting like I committed some horrible crime? No one got hurt. Harrison slammed his glass down on the table, making her jump. No one got hurt, he repeated, his voice laced with anger. Kara, you kidnapped our children. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Kara shifted uncomfortably. She hadn't expected Harrison to be this furious. Aidan was the one she was used to arguing with, but this was different. You make it sound worse than it was, she muttered. Aidan scoffed. Are you even listening to yourself? Silence fell over the table. Even Alden said nothing, watching Kara carefully, waiting for her to either defend herself or accept responsibility. Kara swallowed hard but kept her face neutral. Fine. Maybe I made a mistake. But don't act like you two are saints. You've both done worse things in the past. Harrison's jaw clenched. That doesn't justify what you did. Aidan leaned forward. You crossed a line, Kara. And if you can't see that, then you have a bigger problem than just making mistakes. Kara opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, her phone buzzed again in her lap. Unknown number. You really should be more careful who you make enemies with, Kara. Some people don't forgive so easily. Her stomach twisted. She quickly glanced around the table, suddenly feeling like the walls were closing in. Who was sending these messages? She had planned to use Aidan and Harrison's anger against them, but now, for the first time, she felt like she was losing control. Alden's voice broke through her thoughts. You will apologize, he said calmly. Not because I'm forcing you to, but because it's the right thing to do. Kara set her jaw. And if I don't? Alden placed his knife down gently, looking her dead in the eye. Then you will no longer be under my protection. A shiver ran down Kara's spine. She had always tested her father, always pushed limits, but this was different. There was a finality in his tone, a warning that she wasn't sure she wanted to ignore, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, TikTok, Kara. Time's running out. Kara locked herself in her room after dinner, pacing restlessly. Her father's words played over and over in her mind. Then you will no longer be under my protection. Alden Blackwell never made idle threats. He was a man of power, and with power came control. She had always pushed his limits, always dared to test how much she could get away with. But this time felt different. She threw herself onto her bed, staring at the ceiling. Aidan and Harrison's disappointment stung more than she was willing to admit. She had thought she could handle their anger, but the look in their eyes tonight, the betrayal, the sheer disgust, was something she hadn't prepared for. They weren't just angry. They were done with her. Kara sat up abruptly, pressing her palms against her forehead. Damn it! Why did it feel like the whole world was closing in on her? Her phone vibrated beside her, and she instinctively reached for it, expecting another ominous message, but it wasn't. It was her father. She hesitated before answering. "What?" Alden's voice was as sharp as ever. "Tomorrow morning, you'll go to Aiden and Harrison and apologize. You will take responsibility for your actions." Kara clenched her fist. "And if I don't?" There was a pause before he spoke again, his tone ice cold. "Then I will let you see what it's like to stand on your own." A lump formed in Kara's throat, but she masked it with defiance. "You think I need you?" "I don't think, Kara." "I know." The call ended, leaving Kara gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. She tossed it onto the bed, letting out a bitter laugh. Did her father think she would just roll over and obey? But then, her mind wandered back to the dinner table, to Aiden's piercing glare, to Harrison's fury, to the realization that she had truly hurt them. For years, she had been untouchable. She had made mistakes, played games, manipulated people. But now, for the first time, she felt something she never thought she would regret. Kara inhaled sharply and closed her eyes, willing herself to push it away. She didn't do regret, and yet, as she curled up on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest, a single thought nagged at her. What if I really did go too far this time? She had lost control, and that terrified her more than anything else. Kara barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying everything: Alden's cold warning, Aiden's sharp words, Harrison's fury. The weight of it all sat heavily on her chest, suffocating her in a way she wasn't used to. By morning, the anger she had felt, the defiance, had dulled into something unfamiliar. The dread. She forced herself out of bed and walked to the mirror. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, her face was pale, and even she could see the tension in her shoulders. Kara Blackwell never let emotions weigh her down. She was untouchable, indifferent, invincible. So why did this feel different? She sighed, running a shaky hand through her hair. It wasn't just her father's warning. It was the realization that, for the first time, she might have truly damaged something she couldn't fix. A knock on the door made her flinch. She took a deep breath before answering. One of her father's attendants stood there, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Blackwell expects you downstairs in 15 minutes. Kara didn't respond, just nodded, and closed the door. 15 minutes until she had to sit across from Aiden and Harrison and admit she was wrong. She had never apologized before, not sincerely. Kara changed into something simple but put together. She didn't want to appear weak, but she also didn't want to look like she was trying to intimidate them. She wasn't sure why it mattered so much, maybe because, deep down, she didn't want to lose them. When she walked into the dining hall, Aiden and Harrison were already there, along with Alden. The tension in the room was suffocating. Aiden sat stiffly, his arms crossed, refusing to look at her. Harrison had his jaw clenched, his fingers tapping restlessly against the table. Her father watched everything silently, his expression unreadable. Kara took a slow breath, and then, for the first time in her life, she did something she never thought she'd do. She swallowed her pride. Her voice faltered. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I was wrong." The words felt foreign on her tongue. Aiden's gaze snapped to her, but he didn't speak. Harrison remained motionless. Kara gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to continue. "I thought I was proving a point," she admitted. "But I crossed a line. I shouldn't have taken the kids. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Harrison let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "Do you even understand what you put us through?" Kara hesitated, then nodded. "I do now." Silence stretched between them. Then, Aiden finally spoke. "You can't just fix everything with a half-hearted apology, Kara." His voice was quiet but firm. "Trust isn't that easy to rebuild." Kara felt something tighten in her chest. She had expected resistance, but hearing Aiden say it out loud, hearing the finality in his tone, made her stomach drop. "I know," she admitted softly. Alden finally spoke, his voice calm yet authoritative. "Then prove it." Kara met her father's gaze, then looked back at Aiden and Harrison. She had never been one to earn trust. She had always expected it, but this time, she would have to fight for it, and for the first time, she realized just how much she had to lose if she didn't. The apology had been harder than Kara expected. But the aftermath was even worse. Aiden and Harrison had accepted her words, but their expressions told her the truth: things weren't fixed. Not even close. Trust wasn't built in a day, and for the first time, Kara realized she might not know how to fix this. Her father had barely spoken to her since the meeting, which was even more unsettling. Alden Blackwell was never one to waste words, and his silence carried more weight than anything he could have said. Kara spent the rest of the day locked in her room, replaying everything in her head, but as the sun set, something else nagged at her. The messages. Tick-tock, Kara. Time's running out. A shiver crawled down her spine as she grabbed her phone from the nightstand. The number was still blocked, but the message sat there, taunting her. Whoever it was, they knew her, they knew what she had done, and they wanted her to feel afraid. Kara straightened her shoulders. Fear wasn't an option. If someone thought they could intimidate her, they were wrong. She pulled up her contacts and called the one person who might be able to help. It rang twice before a smooth, familiar voice answered. Well, if it isn't my favorite troublemaker. Kara rolled her eyes. Cut the charm, Lucas. I need your help. Lucas Quinn was a hacker, and not the kind you found lurking in dark basements. He was one of the best in the business, and she had used his skills more than once to dig up dirt on people. Let me guess, he said, amusement lacing his tone. You pissed off the wrong person. Kara hesitated, gripping the phone tighter. Something like that. Lucas sighed. All right, what's the job? I need you to trace a number. A pause. That's it. She hesitated before adding, and find out if anyone's been watching me. Lucas let out a low whistle. Now that's interesting. You're actually worried. I'm cautious, she corrected, hating the way her stomach twisted at the thought. Lucas chuckled. Sure you are, sweetheart. Send me the number. I'll see what I can dig up. Kara ended the call and sent the screenshot of the unknown messages. She stared at the screen for a long moment before exhaling slowly. Whatever was coming, she needed to be ready, because one thing was certain, whoever was behind those messages wasn't just playing games, they wanted something. Kara barely slept that night. Her phone remained silent, no new messages, no updates from Lucas. Yet, the eerie feeling that someone was watching her lingered. By morning, she was on edge. She checked her phone the moment she woke up. Nothing. A frustrated sigh escaped her lips as she threw off the covers and got out of bed. If Lucas didn't have anything by now, it meant one of two things: the number was either expertly hidden, or the person behind it was smart enough to cover their tracks. Neither option made her feel better. A knock at the door startled her. Miss Kara, one of the house attendants called. Mr. Blackwell would like to see you. Kara straightened, smoothing out her silk robe. She wasn't sure what Alden wanted now, but she had no choice but to go. When she stepped into her father's study, he was already seated behind his massive mahogany desk, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered. Kara. His voice was as sharp as ever. She folded her arms. Father. Alden finally glanced up, his piercing gaze studying her. I assume you've given thought to our last conversation. She resisted the urge to roll her eyes. If you mean my apology, then yes. I did what you asked. He set the tablet down. Did you mean it? Kara's lips parted slightly. She wasn't sure why that question threw her off, but it did. Did she mean it? She wanted things to go back to normal. She wanted Aiden and Harrison to stop looking at her like she was some kind of villain. But did that mean she regretted what she had done? She swallowed. Yes. Alden leaned back in his chair, studying her for a long moment. Then prove it. Kara stiffened. I already know, he cut her off. Not with words. Actions. She clenched her fists. And what exactly do you want me to do? Alden's expression didn't change. Fix what you broke. Kara exhaled slowly. Fine. Her father nodded, but as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. And Kara, he said, his tone slightly softer, don't think I don't know what you're up to. She froze. Slowly, she turned back to him. What's that supposed to mean? Alden leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You've been restless. Distracted. You think I don't notice, but I do. Kara felt a chill run down her spine. Did he know about the messages? I'm just dealing with everything that's happened, she lied smoothly. It's been a lot. Alden didn't look convinced, but he didn't press further. Then handle it wisely. Kara gave a small nod and walked out, her pulse quickening. If her father was watching her closely, she needed to be more careful. As soon as she was back in her room, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it instantly. A message from Lucas. Lucas, you were right. Someone's been watching you. And whoever it is, they know exactly what they're doing. Kara's breath caught in her throat. Before she could respond, another text popped up, not from Lucas, from the unknown number. Unknown, time's up, Kara. Let's play. Kara's stomach dropped. She had a bad feeling this was only the beginning. Kara's mind raced as the message from the unknown number burned in her thoughts. Time's up, Kara. Let's play. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at her phone, willing the screen to change, to show something, anything, that would explain what was going on. But it remained the same, the cryptic words mocking her. Time's up, the phrase echoed in her head. What did it mean? She sat down on her bed, her fingers shaking as she typed a response, but after a moment, she deleted it. What if she was making things worse? What if responding would only escalate the situation? But what choice did she have? She had to take control. Kara glanced at the clock. It was nearly midday. She needed to act, but she didn't have the luxury of time. Taking a deep breath, she tapped out a message to Lucas. Kara, what did you find out? It didn't take long for him to reply. Lucas, I traced the number. It's coming from an unlisted line, but there's something interesting. The last time this number contacted anyone was about 3 years ago. Kara's stomach flipped. 3 years ago? What had happened then? She quickly typed another question. Kara, what else? There was a long pause before Lucas responded again. Lucas, there's a pattern. Someone, a few someones, have been watching you for a while. They're tied to your father's business. But the messages, they're not random. They're meant to push you. And I think they're waiting for something. Kara's pulse quickened. Her father's business. She wasn't sure if she was more disturbed by the fact that someone had been keeping tabs on her, or that whoever it was had access to her father's empire. She stared at the screen, unable to shake the dread creeping up her spine. The game had started. And she had no idea how to play. A few hours later, she found herself in her father's study again, pacing back and forth. Alden had been unnervingly quiet ever since their last conversation, and it was beginning to unnerve her. She couldn't ignore the fact that her investigation into the mysterious messages was leading her down a dangerous path, one that seemed to cross paths with her father's dealings. Her phone buzzed again, and she snatched it up. Lucas, the messages, they're coded. It's a warning. Kara's fingers tightened around the phone. Kara, a warning? Lucas, yes. Someone is trying to send a message to your father, but they're using you as a pawn. Her stomach churned. A pawn? Do you ever think about what you're doing to me, Kara? Her thoughts were shattered by her father's voice. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He hadn't entered the room when she had been pacing earlier, and the sudden appearance felt like a shadow creeping into the room. What do you mean? Kara asked, feigning calmness. Alden's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. You think you can play games with people and walk away unscathed. But everything you do has consequences. And I warned you about this. Kara's breath caught in her throat. What are you talking about? He took a step closer. You've been digging into things you shouldn't, and now you're digging up a mess. It's one I won't help you clean up. Kara felt her chest tighten. Was he talking about the messages? Are you involved in this? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Alden's eyes softened, but only for a moment, before his usual coldness returned. You don't want to know the truth, Kara. You've got enough on your plate already. Her heart raced. What truth? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to leave. I've warned you, Kara. Now it's up to you to fix this. Before it's too late. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Kara's mind spun. Whatever game was being played with her, it was more dangerous than she'd imagined. Someone wanted to send a message to her father, and she was the one caught in the middle. The question that had been nagging her since yesterday now burned brighter than ever. What did they want, and why was her father so reluctant to help her? Kara barely slept that night. Her phone remained silent, no new messages, no updates from Lucas. Yet, the eerie feeling that someone was watching her lingered. By morning, she was on edge. She checked her phone the moment she woke up. Nothing. A frustrated sigh escaped her lips as she threw off the covers and got out of bed. If Lucas didn't have anything by now, it meant one of two things: the number was either expertly hidden, or the person behind it was smart enough to cover their tracks. Neither option made her feel better. A knock at the door startled her. "Miss Kara," one of the house attendants called. "Mr. Blackwell would like to see you." Kara straightened, smoothing out her silk robe. She wasn't sure what Alden wanted now, but she had no choice but to go. When she stepped into her father's study, he was already seated behind his massive mahogany desk, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered. "Kara." His voice was as sharp as ever. She folded her arms. "Father." Alden finally glanced up, his piercing gaze studying her. "I assume you've given thought to our last conversation." She resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "If you mean my apology, then yes. I did what you asked." He set the tablet down. "Did you mean it?" Kara's lips parted slightly. She wasn't sure why that question threw her off, but it did. Did she mean it? She wanted things to go back to normal. She wanted Aiden and Harrison to stop looking at her like she was some kind of villain. But did that mean she regretted what she had done? She swallowed. "Yes." Alden leaned back in his chair, studying her for a long moment. "Then prove it." Kara stiffened. "I already know," he cut her off. "Not with words. Actions." She clenched her fists. "And what exactly do you want me to do?" Alden's expression didn't change. "Fix what you broke." Kara exhaled slowly. "Fine." Her father nodded, but as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "And Kara," he said, his tone slightly softer, "don't think I don't know what you're up to." She froze. Slowly, she turned back to him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Alden leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "You've been restless. Distracted. You think I don't notice, but I do." Kara felt a chill run down her spine. Did he know about the messages? "I'm just dealing with everything that's happened," she lied smoothly. "It's been a lot." Alden didn't look convinced, but he didn't press further. "Then handle it wisely." Kara gave a small nod and walked out, her pulse quickening. If her father was watching her closely, she needed to be more careful. As soon as she was back in her room, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it instantly. A message from Lucas. "Lucas, you were right. Someone's been watching you. And whoever it is, they know exactly what they're doing." Kara's breath caught in her throat. Before she could respond, another text popped up, not from Lucas, from the unknown number. "Unknown, time's up, Kara. Let's play." Kara's stomach dropped. She had a bad feeling this was only the beginning. Kara's mind raced as the message from the unknown number burned in her thoughts. "Time's up, Kara. Let's play." Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at her phone, willing the screen to change, to show something, anything, that would explain what was going on. But it remained the same, the cryptic words mocking her. "Time's up," the phrase echoed in her head. What did it mean? She sat down on her bed, her fingers shaking as she typed a response, but after a moment, she deleted it. What if she was making things worse? What if responding would only escalate the situation? But what choice did she have? She had to take control. Kara glanced at the clock. It was nearly midday. She needed to act, but she didn't have the luxury of time. Taking a deep breath, she tapped out a message to Lucas. "Kara, what did you find out?" It didn't take long for him to reply. "Lucas, I traced the number. It's coming from an unlisted line, but there's something interesting. The last time this number contacted anyone was about 3 years ago." Kara's stomach flipped. 3 years ago? What had happened then? She quickly typed another question. "Kara, what else?" There was a long pause before Lucas responded again. "Lucas, there's a pattern. Someone, a few someones, have been watching you for a while. They're tied to your father's business. But the messages, they're not random. They're meant to push you. And I think they're waiting for something. Kara's pulse quickened. Her father's business. She wasn't sure if she was more disturbed by the fact that someone had been keeping tabs on her, or that whoever it was had access to her father's empire. She stared at the screen, unable to shake the dread creeping up her spine. The game had started. And she had no idea how to play. A few hours later, she found herself in her father's study again, pacing back and forth. Alden had been unnervingly quiet ever since their last conversation, and it was beginning to unnerve her. She couldn't ignore the fact that her investigation into the mysterious messages was leading her down a dangerous path, one that seemed to cross paths with her father's dealings. Her phone buzzed again, and she snatched it up. Lucas, the messages, they're coded. It's a warning. Kara's fingers tightened around the phone. Kara, a warning? Lucas, yes. Someone is trying to send a message to your father, but they're using you as a pawn. Her stomach churned. A pawn? Do you ever think about what you're doing to me, Kara? Her thoughts were shattered by her father's voice. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He hadn't entered the room when she had been pacing earlier, and the sudden appearance felt like a shadow creeping into the room. What do you mean? Kara asked, feigning calmness. Alden's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. You think you can play games with people and walk away unscathed? But everything you do has consequences. And I warned you about this. Kara's breath caught in her throat. What are you talking about? He took a step closer. You've been digging into things you shouldn't, and now you're digging up a mess. It's one I won't help you clean up. Kara felt her chest tighten. Was he talking about the messages? Are you involved in this? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Alden's eyes softened, but only for a moment, before his usual coldness returned. You don't want to know the truth, Kara. You've got enough on your plate already. Her heart raced. What truth? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to leave. I've warned you, Kara. Now it's up to you to fix this. Before it's too late. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Kara's mind spun. Whatever game was being played with her, it was more dangerous than she'd imagined. Someone wanted to send a message to her father, and she was the one caught in the middle. The question that had been nagging her since yesterday now burned brighter than ever. What did they want, and why was her father so reluctant to help her? While Kara was away, Alden quietly made a decision, one that had been lingering in his mind long before her last outburst. The house, once buzzing with gossip, silent judgment, and the kind of chatter that made healing feel impossible, needed to change. He called in the house manager and gave a simple instruction: clean slate. Within days, every incapable or idle house help was let go. It wasn't out of cruelty. Alden offered each of them generous compensation, but the environment at home had become too unstable, and Kara deserved a different kind of peace when she returned. He didn't want curious eyes or whispering tongues following her every move. What she needed was a fresh start, even within her own home. When hiring the new staff, Alden was deliberate. No young girls, no sly mouths. He selected middle-aged women, mature and composed, the kind who carried themselves with quiet dignity. Women who wouldn't pry or provoke. He personally oversaw each interview, asking not just about their qualifications, but also their tolerance, their patience, and their understanding of mental and emotional fragility. This wasn't just about managing a household, it was about protecting Kara's fragile recovery. When the gates opened one sunny afternoon and the black SUV pulled into the driveway, Kara stepped out, not into a crowd of familiar, judgmental stares, but into the calm presence of warm, unknown faces. A soft-spoken woman with graying hair and a kind smile opened the front door. "Welcome home, Miss Kara," she said, bowing slightly. "We've been expecting you." Kara blinked, surprised. "Who are you?" "I'm Beatrice. The housekeeper. Mr. Alden said you liked your towels warm and your tea not too strong." She smiled again, not intrusively, just warmly. "Your room is ready." As Kara entered the house, everything felt quieter. Not empty. Just serene. She glanced around. The familiar furniture was there, but something was different. The energy had shifted. No watchful eyes. No whispered judgments. Just space. In the hallway, another lady greeted her politely but without lingering. A third was dusting quietly and offered a gentle nod. Kara paused midway up the stairs. "They don't know anything, do they?" she asked Beatrice, who was following at a respectful distance. Beatrice replied, "Only what they need to. That you're Mr. Alden's daughter. That you've been away. And that this house should be a home, not a court." Kara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel on edge inside her own house upstairs. In her room, everything was just the way she liked it. Her sheets had been changed. Fresh flowers stood by the window. Her favorite throw blanket was folded neatly at the foot of the bed. She sank into the bed and whispered, "Maybe this won't be so hard after all." But deep down, Kara knew that the real battle wasn't the gossip or the whispers, it was herself. And even with new faces around her, she'd still have to face the old ghosts within. A week after settling back home, with therapy sessions making her feel lighter and the new peaceful environment beginning to wrap around her like a warm blanket, Kara made a decision that surprised even herself. She was ready to reconnect. It started with a message to her old group chat, a thread that had long gone silent, with her name now synonymous with drama in many of their circles. Still, she typed with trembling fingers, vulnerability pushing her forward. Kara, hey, I'm back. I know I don't deserve much, but I'd love to have you all over. Just a small get-together. No drama. Just me trying again Saturday. My place. 3 p.m. She stared at the screen, expecting silence, or worse, cruel laughter. But slowly, one by one, replies came in. Maya, I'll come. Let's see how awkward we can make it. Sasha, okay. I'll come. Kara. Thanks for inviting me, Tasha. I'm proud of you for reaching out. Count me in. That Saturday, Kara stood by the wide windows of the living room, nervously peeking outside as the long driveway welcomed the sleek cars of her friends. She had dressed simply, a soft pastel dress, hair tied back in a loose bun, no extravagant makeup or drama. Just herself. The new staff, efficient and calm, served drinks and light snacks. Beatrice made sure everything was running smoothly without hovering too much. When the girls finally entered, the atmosphere was tentative. There were stiff hugs, uncertain glances, and polite smiles. Kara felt her heart hammering. She cleared her throat and stood up to welcome them. I just want to say thank you, she began. For coming. I know I've been a lot. I've hurt people. I've lashed out. And I let my pain make me unbearable. But I'm trying now. I'm not perfect, but I'm in therapy. And I just wanted to share a little joy with people who once mattered to me. Silence. Then Sasha stepped forward. You've changed, she said softly. I can feel it. The old Kara would never say all this. Kara smiled through the prickle of tears. Yeah, the old me wasn't really happy. Laughter trickled into the room. The tension began to melt. Stories flowed. Memories were recalled. They even danced a little to throwback songs, and for the first time in what felt like years, Kara's house echoed with genuine laughter as she still saw the cautiousness in some of their eyes, the way they hesitated a little before getting too close. She didn't blame them. Kara had been laughing, really laughing, for the first time in a long while. The soft tunes playing in the background, the clink of glasses, and the light chatter had wrapped her in a sense of normalcy she had longed for. It felt almost like healing. Then, in a split second, it all shattered. One of the older housekeepers, a quiet, gentle woman in her late 50s, stepped forward with a tray of chilled juice glasses. Her steps were careful but her eyes tired. As she moved past the edge of the sitting area, Kara, distracted by a story Maya was telling, turned quickly, bumping into her. The tray wobbled. A glass tipped. The cool juice spilled down the front of Kara's dress, a pale pink designer piece she had chosen so carefully to mark her new self. Time slowed for a moment. The old woman gasped. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Kara's expression twisted as she stared down at the spreading stain. Are you blind? She snapped, voice sharp and biting. Do you know how expensive this is? The woman bowed her head, already trembling. It was an accident, Miss Kara. I didn't mean, I don't care what you meant. Kara shrieked, grabbing a napkin and tossing it aside. You shouldn't even be serving if you can't walk straight. The room froze. No one moved, and then, crack, Kara's palm flew through the air and landed hard on the woman's cheek. A stunned silence swept over the room. The tray hit the floor with a metallic clatter, juice splashing over the tiles. The woman, too shocked to even cry, took a step back and looked at Kara with eyes wide with pain and humiliation. "Kara, stop this." Sasha stood abruptly, eyes blazing. "I thought you had changed." "I thought so too," Maya echoed in disbelief. "She's old enough to be your mother." That word, mother. Kara's entire body stiffened. Her hands balled into fists. The room seemed to blur at the edges as something dark cracked open inside her. Don't say that," she shouted, her voice hoarse. "She is not my mother. Don't ever say that word around me." "Kara," Tasha whispered, cautiously stepping forward, "no one meant to hurt you. But this is not okay." Kara's breath came in harsh gasps. Her eyes darted widely. All she could see was that word circling in her head, unraveling years of pain she hadn't yet managed to silence. Her guests watched in horror and heartbreak as she spun on her heel and stormed out of the room, heels clacking furiously against the tiles. The old woman still stood there, one hand pressed to her cheek, tears brimming but refusing to fall. Ethan, who had just entered the hall, froze at the sight, then turned his gaze toward the trail Kara had left. He knew this outburst wasn't just about spilled juice. It was about the pieces of her that therapy hadn't reached yet, the ghosts she still hadn't faced. The room remained frozen in a stunned silence after Kara stormed out. The soft music that had once given the evening a celebratory warmth now seemed painfully out of place. Glasses sat untouched. The air was thick with tension and disbelief. The old woman stood still, one hand still gently touching her reddened cheek. Her eyes, glassy with unshed tears, shifted from one guest to another, searching for understanding, or maybe just a sign that what had just happened wasn't as cruel as it felt. I didn't mean to cause any trouble," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was just a mistake. She does this all the time," Maya said bitterly, breaking the silence. She walked over and picked up the tray from the floor. "You didn't deserve that." "Honestly," Sasha added, her arms folded across her chest, "you're lucky that's all she did. The last girl she attacked had to go for stitches." The old lady's eyes widened in disbelief. "But I was told she had changed. I was told she was doing better." Maya let out a dry laugh, one that carried more pity than humor. "Changed? That's what we all thought. That's why we came. But you know what? It's always the same. The fits, the screaming, the attacks. And now we get it, why all the previous helps were fired. Some of them even begged to stay, even after getting slapped or insulted. But Mr. Alden had no choice. She was the reason they were all let go." The older woman took a shaky step back, clearly rattled. "I thought she was just troubled. Maybe healing, but this is something else." "She's not just troubled," Sasha said softly. "She's a psycho. A beautiful one, yes, but dangerous when triggered. And the worst part? No one around her really holds her accountable. Not for long, anyway." The old woman's breath caught in her throat. Her job here had seemed like a quiet one, a fresh start in a quiet home. She had never imagined walking into a house haunted not just by pain, but by unchecked rage. She slowly turned away, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself. But in her heart, she knew the truth now. She was not just working in a household with trauma, she was standing inside the eye of a storm that could erupt at any moment. Kara descended the staircase slowly, the shadows of the dimly lit hallway stretching long across the marble floor. Her steps were soft, almost silent, until she paused midway upon hearing hushed voices drifting from the kitchen. "I swear, the girl's not right in the head," the older lady was saying, her voice low but firm. "She slapped me for spilling juice. Just imagine what she could do if she really lost control. And did you hear what happened to the others before us?" A muffled gasp followed. One of the younger house helps whispered, "I thought she was in therapy. I thought she changed." "Changed," another scoffed. "Please. She's just better at hiding it now. The man of the house probably has no idea who he's living with." Kara stood frozen. The words pierced through her like ice-cold needles, rooting her to the spot. Her breathing quickened, but she didn't make a sound. She moved a step closer, the floorboard creaking beneath her bare foot. The creak was just enough. The women in the kitchen turned sharply. Time stood still for a heartbeat as their eyes locked with Kara's. Her face was unreadable, but her presence alone was enough to send a chill through the room. One by one, they scrambled. Dishes clattered, chairs scraped back. The women bolted from the kitchen in all directions like leaves scattered by the wind, murmuring half-hearted apologies and excuses as they fled past her. Kara stood alone in the kitchen now. Her lips were slightly parted, but no words came. She walked slowly to the water dispenser, picked up a glass with a shaky hand, and filled it. Her reflection in the kitchen window stared back at her, haunted, tired, and worn. She took a sip of the cold water and placed the glass down carefully. Then, without a word, she turned and walked out of the kitchen, the silence behind her louder than the gossip she'd overheard. Kara walked quietly to her room, each step heavier than the last. She closed the door gently behind her and leaned against it, pressing her back to the cool wood. Her hands trembled slightly, and her chest rose and fell in slow, measured breaths as if she were trying to hold something in, something volatile and dangerous. The room was dimly lit, golden rays of the setting sun filtering through the sheer curtains. It used to feel safe here. Familiar. But now, even her sanctuary felt hollow. She moved toward the mirror and stared at herself, really stared. Her reflection looked composed, but she knew better. The faint red mark from her earlier rage still glowed on her cheek. Her eyes, though dry, shimmered with restrained anguish. She hated that she still had that look, the one that told people, she's dangerous, even when she wasn't speaking. Her mind reeled, replaying the moment the old woman mentioned her mother. Her mother, that word hit harder than any insult. It was like pulling off a bandage she'd forced herself to forget existed. The word didn't just sting, it unraveled her. Every time someone spoke about mothers, it made her feel defective, discarded. Like her life had a missing piece no one could ever replace. She's old enough to be your mother. Kara grimaced, grabbing a pillow from her bed and pressing it against her mouth as she screamed into it. A deep, guttural, silent scream, the kind she used to let out as a child when the world was too much, when the loneliness consumed her psycho. She hasn't changed. Just better at hiding it now. Their words spun through her head like poison. She dropped the pillow and sat on the floor, curling into herself, arms wrapped around her knees. Her thoughts weren't loud, they were sharp. Like needles pricking at her sanity. Why do I keep ruining everything? Why do I lose control when I know I shouldn't? Why does it hurt so much when they mention a mother I can't even remember hugging goodbye? She dug her nails into her arms, not to hurt, but to feel something real, something she could control. For a moment, she felt like the broken girl sitting in the ashes again, clutching Ethan's hand and pretending not to cry. Except now she didn't have Ethan. She didn't have anyone. She chased them all away. Her chest ached as a tear finally fell. Then another. Kara wiped her tears, stood up from the floor, and took a deep breath. Her reflection still stared back at her, exhausted, volatile, but trying. Always trying, but trying didn't ease the fire burning in her chest. She needed to let it out. Another drama at home would only bring more shame to her father. Alden had already done enough, protecting her, shielding her from the consequences of her actions, hiring new help to create a fresh start for her. She couldn't bring another scandal into the house. Not now. So, she made a decision. Kara grabbed her phone and dialed quickly. "Hey," she said, her voice suddenly light, even charming. "Drinks at the club tonight. My treat." Her friends, those who still answered her calls, were quick to accept. Drama or not, no one turned down an invitation to Kara's club. Exclusive. Lavish. Her personal escape, filled with intoxicating music, dim lights, and no consequences. 2 hours later, she stepped into the private lounge of the club like a queen returning to her court. The loud bass thudded in the background, and the scent of expensive perfume and liquor hung in the air like a veil. Her friends were already there, dressed to impress, laughing too loudly, drinking too much. They greeted her with playful cheers and empty compliments. "Kara, we thought you'd bail." "I wouldn't miss my own party," she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. She signaled the bartender for top-shelf tequila, vodka, everything. If she couldn't silence her pain, she could at least drown it. As the drinks flowed and the music pulsed, Kara laughed, too loud, too forced. Her friends buzzed around her, some genuinely happy to be there, others just feeding off her name and wealth, but behind her laughter was an edge. Every sip numbed her thoughts, dulled the sting of betrayal, quieted the voice that told her she was spiraling. She watched them all through half-lidded eyes, smiling, gossiping, dancing. None of them really cared about her. Not the girl who screamed into pillows. Not the girl who missed her mother. Not the girl who was barely holding on. The private lounge pulsed around them, neon reflections dancing off crystal glassware, the low thump of bass vibrating through the floor. Kara sat on her velvet banquette, laughter still on her lips, as a young server approached, balancing a silver tray of ice-cold cocktails. "Here you go, Miss Kara, another round," the waiter said softly, her hand steady but her eyes downcast. At Kara's table, the mood shifted. Maya snatched a glass from the tray and held it aloft. "Ooh, look at you in your fancy uniform, aren't you just adorable?" she cooed, voice dripping with false sweetness. Before the girl could replace the tray, Sasha leaned forward. "Let's see what's underneath, sweetheart. Bet you've got secrets to hide." She circled the young woman like a shark, eyes gleaming in the club lights. The waiter's breath caught. I should go," she whispered, turning to retreat. "Not so fast," Tasha chimed in. "We're celebrating, honey. And you're our entertainment." She tugged at the hem of the girl's blouse. "Come on, show Kara, and us, how grateful you are." The tray clattered to the floor as the waiter backed away, panic flickering across her face. Tears pricked her eyelids, but she forced them down. She tried to cover herself with trembling hands. "Please, this isn't necessary," she stammered. Kara's laughter caught in her throat. She sat frozen, watching her friends jeer a strip. "We want to see you let loose. Don't be shy, we pay your wages tonight." The waiter's cheeks burned bright red. Music and revelers blurred around her. Hands shook as she reached for her buttons, desperation in every movement. Then she stopped, frozen at the edge of total humiliation. Something inside Kara cracked. The heat of her anger, the one she had chased away with drinks, flared anew, directed now at her friends, at herself. She stood abruptly, glass tumbling from her hand, the liquid splashing across her own shoes. "Enough." Kara's voice cut through the cacophony. It was low, icy, commanding attention. Maya recoiled. "What, Kara, we're just having fun." "No," Kara said, stepping between her friends and the trembling waiter. "This stops. Now." Her heart pounded, shame and rage colliding in her chest. "Leave her alone." The girl stared, stunned into silence. The waiter's eyes met Kara's, wide, terrified, pleading. Kara knelt slowly beside her, voice gentler. "I'm so sorry," she said, her own tears finally breaking free. "This was my fault. I invited them, and I should have stopped them." The young woman's shoulders shook as she finally let the tears fall. Kara reached out, gathering the tray and the fallen drinks. "I'll get you a cab," she whispered. "And I'll cover your shift tonight. You won't have to come back here." At the edge of the lounge, Alden's face loomed in Kara's mind, his faith in her, Malcolm's words, Ethan's promise. Every promise she'd made to change pressed on her with unbearable weight. She stood, extending a trembling hand to the waiter. "Come on," she murmured. "Let me help you up." Kara's hand hovered over the young woman's arm, an offering of support, but in that instant she recoiled. Instead of helping her up, Kara's grip tightened and with a sharp shove she sent the girl crashing to the floor. Glass and ice scattered around them. The waiter's face hit the marble with a dull smack. She curled inward, tears and fear washing over her as she tried to scramble away. Kara stood over her, panting, chest heaving. "Don't you dare look at me like that," Kara hissed, voice low but fierce. "I don't want your thanks. I don't want your pity." The other girls froze, guilt and shock in their eyes. They whispered apologies, but Kara barely registered them. Everything in her screamed, "I am not a charity case." Her gaze darkened as she looked past the trembling server to the glittering bar beyond, at her own reflection in the polished chrome, at the memory of Alden's gentle eyes when he had first taken them in as children. She hated how his kindness made her feel small, indebted. That look of pity that she was powerless to escape. A fierce, scorching fury rose in her chest, hotter than any alcohol. She took a step back, drawing herself tall. "Leave," she ordered, voice trembling with contempt. "All of you, get out of my sight." Her so-called friends recoiled, glancing at each other as though suddenly realizing the monster they'd cheered on. They slipped away, murmuring half-hearted farewells. Kara didn't help the waiter up. Instead, she turned on her heel and marched out of the private lounge, her heels clicking a harsh rhythm across the floor. Behind her, the young woman lay crumpled, cradling her cheek, confusion and hurt mingled with relief that the ordeal was over. Outside, the cool night air hit Kara like a slap. She inhaled sharply, trying to quell the storm inside. Pain, shame, and rage churned together. Kara stood on the balcony, the cool night air swirling around her, biting at her skin like the bitter thoughts that wouldn't leave her mind. The city lights flickered far below her, a distant, cold reminder of how disconnected she had become from everything she once valued. She had everything a person could want: wealth, power, a family who had always tried to shelter her, but now, the very things that should have filled her with pride felt like shackles she couldn't escape. Her father's kindness, his pity, it had always been there. She had pushed it away, rejected it because it reminded her of what she feared the most, that she was weak, that she wasn't enough to stand on her own. And tonight, that feeling was stronger than ever. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms as she fought the rising tide of anger and self-loathing. How did it all come to this? She thought back to the events of the night, the way her so-called friends had cheered her on, egging her to humiliate the poor girl just to satisfy her need for validation. Each insult thrown, each laugh shared, only made Kara feel emptier. And yet, in the moment, she couldn't stop herself. She had wanted to feel powerful again, to feel like she was in control of something, anything, but it was never enough. The sound of footsteps on the marble floors below interrupted her thoughts. She knew it was Alden before she even turned around. He didn't need to say a word for Kara to sense the weight of his disappointment. He always knew when something was wrong, when she was spiraling. "I told you, Kara." Alden's voice was calm but firm, the tone that always preceded a lecture. "You promised me you would try. You said you wanted to change." Kara's body tensed, her back still turned toward him. She didn't want to face him, didn't want him to see the truth written all over her. But she couldn't help it. She spun around, her face twisted with frustration. "I did try, okay? But you don't get it." Her voice cracked, raw and full of emotion. "You see me as some broken thing that needs fixing, and I'm sick of it." Alden took a step forward, his eyes softening with concern. "No, Kara. I see you as my daughter. And I want you to find peace, to heal from all the pain you've been carrying. But you have to let go of the anger first." She shook her head, her chest tightening as the words escaped her. "I can't. I don't know how to." The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken truths. Kara's heart pounded in her chest, her emotions a chaotic whirlwind of anger, fear, and sorrow. For the first time, she felt truly exposed, vulnerable. Alden stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You're not alone in this, Kara. You don't have to do it by yourself." But before Kara could respond, the door slammed open, cutting through the moment. It was one of the housekeepers, looking frantic. "Mr. Alden, you need to come quickly. There's something wrong with Ethan. He's missing." Kara froze, her blood running cold. "Ethan? Missing?" Alden's face went pale. "What do you mean missing? Where is he?" The housekeeper's breath was ragged, her words tumbling out in a panic. "He's gone, Mr. Alden. His room is empty, and no one has seen him for hours. He left a note." Kara's heart dropped into her stomach. A note? What was going on? What had happened to her brother? Without thinking, she bolted from the balcony, her footsteps pounding down the hall. Alden was right behind her, his voice calling her name, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She had to find Ethan. The tension in the house had shifted, a heavy, suffocating air settling over everything. The note was nowhere to be found, and no one had seen Ethan leave. Panic began to set in as the seconds ticked by, each one more excruciating than the last. Kara found herself standing at Ethan's door, staring at the empty room, the unsettling silence pressing in around her. Where could he have gone? What was going on? Just as she was about to turn and ask Alden what to do next, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen lit up with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello. Kara's voice was shaky. Hello, Kara, a cold voice on the other end said. You're looking for your brother, aren't you? Well, I have him. Kara's breath caught in her throat. Who is this? What do you want? The voice chuckled, dark and menacing. I think you know exactly what I want. And if you want Ethan back, you'll have to play by my rules. The line went dead. Kara's hand shook as she lowered the phone, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. Who was this person? Why Ethan? What had she gotten herself into? And more importantly, what had she done to deserve this? Before she could process the situation further, Alden was at her side, his hand resting on her shoulder. Who was it? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Kara looked up at him, her face pale and stricken with fear. I don't know. But they have Ethan. And I have to find him, before it's too late. The words hung in the air, and just as they were about to take action, the sound of the front door slamming open echoed through the hallway. A shadow loomed at the entrance, and all Kara could do was stare. Who was standing there? What did they want from her? The figure at the door stepped forward, casting a long, menacing shadow across the entryway. Kara's heart pounded in her chest as she squinted, trying to make out the details. The faint silhouette gave nothing away, only an ominous presence that sent a chill down her spine. Alden moved instinctively in front of her, his protective stance blocking the path between Kara and the stranger. Who are you? Alden's voice was firm, demanding an answer. The figure paused, taking a long, deliberate moment before speaking in a low, gravelly voice that made Kara's skin crawl. I think you know who I am. Kara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She recognized the voice. It was the same one from the phone call. I don't have time for games, she said, her voice wavering despite her attempt at bravado. Where is Ethan? The figure stepped into the dim light, and Kara's breath hitched as she saw the person clearly for the first time. It was a man, wearing a long, dark coat, his face obscured by a hood. But it was his eyes, the cold, calculating look, that made Kara's blood run cold. You're looking for your brother, Haik, the man said, his voice dripping with malice. Well, he's safe for now. But not for long. You know, it's funny. I used to think people like you had it all. But look at you now, scrambling to save someone else when you've always been so wrapped up in yourself. Kara's stomach churned. The words hit too close to home, bringing back the feelings of inadequacy she had tried so hard to bury. But she couldn't let this man, whoever he was, see her weakness. What do you want? Alden asked again, his voice more tense than before. The man grinned, but there was no humor in it, only cold, unsettling menace. What I want? You're in no position to be asking questions, Alden. You've got something I want. Something very valuable. And I'll make sure your precious daughter learns the cost of not giving it to me. Kara's blood ran cold. What could this man possibly be talking about? What did he want from them? She took a step forward, determined not to show any fear. What are you talking about? If you've got Ethan, I don't care what you want, just tell me where he is. The man chuckled darkly, the sound like nails scraping across a chalkboard. Patience, dear. You'll learn soon enough. But first, I need to see how far you're willing to go to save him. Let's see if you've learned anything from all this time you've been running away from your past. Kara's head spun, her thoughts tumbling over each other. What did he mean by that? And then it hit her. She had been running from everything she couldn't face, from the mistakes she'd made, from the person she had become. And now, everything was coming to a head. I'll do anything to get him back, Kara said, her voice strong despite the trembling in her chest. Tell me what you want. The man stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that felt suffocating. I think you already know. It's time for you to stop hiding, Kara. Time for you to face the truth. If you want your brother back, you'll have to confront everything you've been avoiding, the people you've hurt, the choices you've made. All of it. A wave of nausea washed over Kara. She had tried to move past the things she'd done, the mistakes she'd made, but now it seemed like the universe was forcing her to confront them. She felt her body trembling with a mix of fear and frustration. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, her voice strained but defiant. "But if you hurt my brother, I swear to God, you won't do anything," the man interrupted, his voice icy. "You've always been all talk, Kara. And now, you'll see what happens when you don't follow through." The man turned to leave, but just as he reached the door, he glanced back over his shoulder, his lips curling into a twisted smile. "I'll be in touch. Don't take too long." Before Kara could react, he was gone, disappearing into the night as if he had never been there. The house felt emptier now, the silence almost suffocating. Alden slowly turned to Kara, his face filled with worry and concern. "Do you have any idea who that was? What he meant?" Kara swallowed hard, the weight of his words crashing down on her. She shook her head, unable to speak for a moment. "No," she finally whispered. "But I don't think this is just about Ethan. This is about everything. Everything I've done. Everything I've tried to hide." Her father's expression softened, his hand reaching out to gently place it on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, Kara. Whatever he wants, we'll face it together." But Kara couldn't shake the feeling that something much darker was at play. As the door slammed shut behind them, a chilling realization dawned on her. This wasn't just about Ethan. Kara sank onto the edge of Ethan's empty bed, the rough quilt twisting beneath her. Her fingers traced the indentation where he'd slept, as though she could summon him back with the memory of his weight against the mattress. Alden's footsteps in the hallway told her he was there, waiting, hesitant, worried. "I found this," Alden said quietly, holding out a folded piece of paper. Kara took it with trembling hands. It was Ethan's handwriting, messy and small. "Kara, I'm sorry I ran. I couldn't watch you break yourself anymore. I had to get away. I'll be safe. Don't come looking for me. You have your own battles to fight. I love you always. The note was both a plea and a confession. Ethan was trying to protect her, again, just as he had all those years ago under the bridge. And now he had vanished into the night, leaving her to face her demons alone. Tears blurred Kara's vision as she crumpled the paper. "He's right," she whispered. "I have to face this, to stop running." Alden knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Then let's start tonight. We'll gather what we know, and we'll go find him. Together." Kara looked up at him, searching his eyes for certainty. Instead, she saw only love, and the weight of every mistake she'd ever made mirrored in his expression. She inhaled and nodded. They moved silently through the house, gathering coats, flashlights, her phone, anything that might help. In the study, Kara paused before a wall of framed photos, her and Ethan at birthdays, holidays, quiet afternoons in the garden. Each snapshot a reminder of what she was fighting for, and what nearly slipped away forever. Outside, the sky crackled with distant thunder, as though the heavens themselves were warning her of the storm ahead. Alden started the car, and they drove into the night, the city's glare fading behind them. Every streetlight they passed felt like a countdown. Ethan could be anywhere, huddled in an alley, hiding in an empty warehouse, or lost in the maze of his own grief. And time was slipping through their fingers. As they turned onto a deserted road leading out of town, Kara's phone buzzed. A single text: "Look under the old bridge. Come alone." A friend. Her heart seized. A friend? Or something worse? She glanced at Alden, whose steady gaze met hers in the rearview mirror. Without a word, she slid out of the car, leaving the engine running, and stepped into the rain-slicked darkness. Alden called after her, but she didn't turn back. Every drop lashing her face felt like a wake-up call. This was her moment. To save her brother. To reclaim herself under the bridge. The midday sun couldn't have felt colder. Shadows shifted in the water below, and on the wet ground, she saw a single footprint, too large to be hers. Her breath caught. She took another step forward, and into the echo of a familiar voice. "Kara." She froze. Kara's heart hammered as the torchlight revealed a tall, familiar silhouette crouched by the water's edge. Rain dripped in slow rivulets off the concrete arch, pooling in shallow puddles around her feet. "Kara," came the soft, ragged whisper again. She stumbled forward, every nerve screaming with relief and dread. "Ethan," she called, voice cracking. The figure straightened slowly. Moonlight glinted off the damp hair that fell over his face. Kara's breath caught. It was him. Her brother, alive, but gaunt and shivering, his shirt clinging to bruised arms. She gasped, rushing to his side. "You're here." "Oh God, thank." Before she could reach him, a hand shot out from the darkness behind Ethan and clamped over his mouth, cutting him off with a muffled gasp. Kara froze, panic snapping her limbs rigid. She whipped around. In the shadows, the kidnapper stepped into the half-light, a tall man in a soaked trench coat, face still obscured by a hood. One pale hand held a knife low at his side, the other pressed Ethan's shoulder into the wet concrete. "Don't come any closer," the man said, voice cold, flattening the damp air between them. "Or I swear I'll..." "Let him go," Kara snarled, venom sharpening her words as she dropped the flashlight and kicked it aside. Its beam spun crazily, illuminating the panicked terror in Ethan's eyes. The kidnapper's head tilted, amused. "So, this is the great Kara Steele. Angry, broken, but your brother," he sneered toward Ethan. "Your precious brother, he's scared, isn't he?" Kara's chest constricted. Rage and fear warred inside her. She stepped forward, fists clenched. "Whatever you want, I want you to see him suffer before I decide his fate," the man interrupted softly, pulling Ethan upright. "After everything you've done, your cruelty, your rage, now it's your turn to plead." He pressed the knife's tip against Ethan's throat, slow and deliberate. "Kneel." Ethan's trembling knees buckled, and he sank to the ground, head bowed. Kara's knees trembled too, but she remained standing. Her gaze flicked to the knife, then to her brother's terrified face. "Please," she whispered, a single word that held every ounce of regret and desperation she'd ever felt. The kidnapper cocked his head. "That's all I needed to hear." He stepped back, the knife sliding away from Ethan's throat but still glinting ominously in his hand. "Now, Kara, get on your knees next to him. If you don't, this ends badly for both of you." Thunder rumbled overhead as the flashlight's beam finally died, plunging them into darkness. Kara's world narrowed to the faint sound of Ethan's ragged breath and the steady drip of water from the arch above. She swallowed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll kneel." Slowly, Kara lowered herself, every drop of rain stinging her skin, every memory of her past failures echoing in her mind. As her knees hit the cold concrete beside Ethan's, she looked up at the stranger, at the knife, at the injustice of the moment, and realized that this was the crucible that would either break her or forge her anew. Behind the lean silhouette of the kidnapper, a final flash of steel glinted in the gloom, not the blade in his hand, but something clipped to his belt, Alden's distinctive family crest. Kara's breath caught again. This was never random. Her eyes locked onto the emblem as the man's hooded head dipped in acknowledgement, and she understood with chilling clarity the secrets she'd buried ran deeper than she could ever have imagined, and now, they were all about to come to light. She dared a glance at Ethan, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks, and whispered, "I'm here. I won't let him hurt you." The kidnapper's grin was dark as the black waters beneath the bridge. "We'll see about that." Kara's fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms, the pain sharp and real, grounding her in the cold reality of her situation. She had always been used to the weight of loneliness, but this was different. The isolation felt like a physical presence, suffocating her from every angle. No one wanted her. No one understood her. Not even Ethan, the one person who had always been by her side, had walked away. The thought made her stomach churn, her insides roiling with a fury she couldn't control. She hadn't expected Ethan to leave her. She had thought, after everything, that he would be the one person who would stick by her, who would understand her rage, her pain. They were survivors, bound by the trauma they had shared, by the life they had struggled through together. Yet here he was, gone, leaving her alone with nothing but her demons. Her head buzzed with an overwhelming need to act, to do something, anything, to make them see her, to make them care. Her entire life had been a series of reckless decisions, impulsive outbursts, and relationships that crumbled under the weight of her anger. And now, even Ethan, her brother, had abandoned her. Her heart hammered in her chest, and her breaths came in ragged gasps. She turned, pacing the room in tight circles, her mind spinning faster than her feet. The room was oppressive, the walls closing in on her. Nothing felt real. Everything felt like a blur of lost opportunities and broken bonds. Why hadn't anyone been there for her? She had tried. She had tried so damn hard to change, to be better, but it was never enough. The scars of her past haunted her like ghosts that wouldn't let go, and every time she tried to break free, they dragged her back into the darkness. She slammed her fist against the wall, feeling the sting of the impact shoot through her arm, but it didn't even begin to ease the fury rising within her. She needed to do something. Anything. She couldn't be this broken anymore. Kara's gaze flicked to the window, the streets below a blur of headlights and shadows, the world oblivious to the storm raging inside her. A part of her wanted to scream, to lash out, to make everyone feel what she was feeling. She wanted them to see her pain, her frustration, her desperation. The thought of Alden's pity still burned like acid in her chest. The way he had looked at her, the way his eyes had softened in disappointment. She didn't want his pity. She wanted respect. She wanted someone to look at her and see strength, not weakness. A flash of movement caught her eye. The old lady, the one who had served them at the club, had tried to help her before the anger had overtaken her. She had wanted to protect the girl from being humiliated, but Kara had thrown her to the ground instead. That memory twisted the knife deeper in her chest. She hated that feeling, the feeling of being pitied, the feeling of being looked down upon. Kara snapped her head back toward the door, a plan forming in her mind like a storm. She would show them all. She would make them understand that she wasn't weak. She wasn't broken. With a swift motion, she grabbed her jacket from the back of the chair, her mind made up. She wouldn't let anyone see her as a victim anymore. She would be in control again. She would make them respect her, even if she had to burn everything to the ground to get it. Her thoughts were dark, filled with rage and a desperate need for revenge. She didn't care who stood in her way anymore. Alden, Ethan, everyone who had turned their backs on her, none of them mattered. Kara's mind was a storm as she sped down the dimly lit road, her foot heavy on the accelerator, her vision blurred by hot tears and blinding rage. The city lights whizzed past like ghosts mocking her every breath, and her grip on the steering wheel was tight enough to turn her knuckles white. She didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to run, to leave behind the humiliation, the pity, the loneliness. She wanted to escape everything and everyone, if only for a moment. Then it happened. A shadow appeared from nowhere. There was a loud thud, the screech of brakes, and the jolt of the car as it came to a violent stop. Time seemed to freeze. Her heart leapt into her throat. She sat frozen for a split second, then flung open the door and stumbled out, her heels scraping against the pavement. Her eyes darted around, frantic, until they landed on a figure lying motionless on the cold tarmac. It was a middle-aged woman, wrapped in a threadbare shawl, one slipper missing, a shopping bag torn beside her with oranges rolling across the road. Kara's chest heaved as panic warred with pride. She crouched beside the woman, scanning her face for signs of consciousness. Her lips parted to speak, but the woman groaned and tried to sit up, clutching her side. Relief was quickly consumed by a different emotion, anger. The woman didn't look like she had money. Her clothes were faded, her hands rough with labor. Kara's eyes narrowed. You walked into my car, didn't you? She snapped, standing upright again. People like you, always looking for a payday. The woman flinched and tried to speak, but Kara didn't let her. I know your kind. You probably threw yourself in front of my car just so you can scream injury and sue me for money you didn't work for. Her voice grew louder and shriller. Well, it won't work. I'm not some soft-hearted fool you can trick. A small crowd was beginning to form, people pulling out their phones, whispering among themselves. A young man stepped closer, frowning amiss. I think you should calm down, she's clearly hurt. Kara whipped around. Oh, so now you're all defending her? None of you saw what happened. She walked into my car, she shouted, gesturing wildly. I'm the victim here. The woman on the ground coughed and whispered, please. I didn't see the car. Kara let out a bitter laugh. Of course not. That's your line, right? Poor woman, didn't see the car. Just wants a little sympathy. Someone in the crowd muttered, this is messed up, and another person added, doesn't she see the woman's bleeding? Kara's eyes darted around, seeing the judgment in their faces. They were looking at her like she was a monster. Like they pitied the woman and hated her, that word again, pity. Her breath quickened. Her world spun again. Suddenly, she heard sirens in the distance, drawing closer. A man had already called for help. Kara looked down at her trembling hands, then back at the woman who was now being helped to sit up by two strangers. Her jaw tightened. She wanted to scream, to run again, but the crowd was too thick now. Kara's body went rigid at the woman's voice. "She's old enough to be your mother, for heaven's sake," a lady in the crowd exclaimed, shaking her head in disbelief, and just like that, the dam broke. Kara's breathing grew rapid. Her eyes darkened, her jaw locked. That word again, mother. It echoed like a curse in her ears. She is not my mother. Kara screamed, pointing a trembling, furious finger toward the fallen woman, though the words weren't even meant for her. "Don't you dare say that. My mother." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on, louder now, drowning out the murmurs, the disapproval, the whispers. "My mother left us. She left me. So don't you dare mention that word like it means anything to me." The crowd recoiled at her eruption. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the woman on the ground flinched at the venom in her voice. The sirens were now just around the corner, their flashing lights painting the faces of the spectators in eerie red and blue. An ambulance pulled up, and two paramedics rushed out, gently lifting the woman onto a stretcher. Her weak groan sliced through the silence. Kara stepped back instinctively, her chest heaving. One of the paramedics turned to Kara after checking the woman's vitals. "She needs to be taken in immediately." "Are you her relative?" Kara scoffed. "Of course not." "Well, you hit her. You'll need to come with us and give your statement, and you'll be responsible for her bills, at least for tonight." Kara opened her mouth to argue, but the look from the officer stepping out of a patrol car just behind the ambulance silenced her. She gave a frustrated nod and followed the ambulance, her heels clicking sharply against the asphalt. As they drove, Kara sat stiffly at the back of the ambulance, arms folded, jaw clenched, her mind spinning with rage and confusion. Every part of her was tense, her fingers curling into fists, her lips pressed tight, her eyes burning from the weight of unshed tears. The woman lay quietly on the stretcher beside her, barely conscious. The soft beeping of the monitor and the low murmur of the paramedics were the only sounds. Kara couldn't stop thinking about the word mother. She hated it. Hated how it made her feel. Hated that even now, years later, her mother's abandonment could still reach inside her and twist her insides like a cruel hand. She didn't even notice her own tears until one splashed onto her lap. She quickly wiped it away, furious with herself for being weak. But inside, she was cracking. This night was spiraling. First the humiliation at home, then the club, and now this accident. A woman bleeding beside her? Strangers looking at her like a monster. And worst of all, someone saying she looked like her mother. The ambulance pulled into the emergency entrance. Kara stepped out first, stiff-backed and proud, but the guilt and fury clawed beneath her skin like fire. She followed them into the hospital, signing forms, handling billing, going through motions like a robot. But inside, Kara Gray was coming undone, and the worst part? She had no idea who she was unraveling into. Jane was shown to her room by one of the junior maids, a quiet, well-lit guest suite at the far end of the West Wing. It was more space than she had ever had to herself, with crisp white sheets, polished wooden floors, and a large window that overlooked the garden. But despite the comfort and silence of her surroundings, sleep refused to come. She sat on the edge of the bed, the memory of Kara's face haunting her like a ghost in the dark. Her rudeness had been cutting, yes, but it wasn't her words that had unsettled Jane the most. It was her eyes, those eyes, so fierce, so defiant, yet filled with something deeper, something broken. Jane had seen those eyes before, long ago. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into the small handbag she had brought with her. From a hidden flap, she pulled out an old, worn photo. The corners were frayed, the image faded, but still clear enough to see the two small faces smiling back at her, her children. Her heart clenched. The girl in the photo, her eyes were the same. There was no mistaking it. Kara reminded her of her daughter, her lost daughter. Jane had forced herself to forget, had buried the memories beneath years of poverty, of survival, of pain. But now they were crawling back to the surface with every word Kara spoke, with every flare of anger in her voice, with every stubborn glint in her eye. What if? No. It couldn't be, could it? Tears burned behind Jane's eyes, but she wiped them away roughly, forcing herself to breathe. She lay down, hoping to will her body into rest, but her mind was racing. She turned to the side, stared into the dim light that filtered through the curtains, and clutched the photo to her chest. Somewhere, deep inside, a terrible possibility was starting to grow roots, and Jane didn't know if she was ready for the truth. Jane lay on the bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, but she wasn't seeing the fine carvings or the soft glow of the chandelier. Her mind was spiraling back to the past, years she had tried to bury deep in the corners of her soul. But tonight, Kara's face, her eyes, they had unlocked memories Jane had spent a lifetime trying to forget. She remembered being just a girl, barely out of her teenage years, when she fell in love with Job. He was gentle, intelligent, full of dreams, and he loved her fiercely, or so she believed. They had whispered about the future under the moonlight, made promises of forever in the quiet corners of their youth. When she discovered she was pregnant, she wasn't afraid. She believed love would carry them through. She believed in him, but her family thought differently. The moment she confessed, everything changed. Their well-respected name, their pride, their status, it all stood on the line, and Jane became the disgrace. Her parents had demanded she terminate the pregnancy immediately. Her mother wept out of shame, not concern. Her father had been unforgiving, but Jane refused. Job had promised to return. He had gone back to his village to take care of a few things and told her to wait. She did. For days. Then weeks. Then months. He never came back. No word. No letter. Nothing. Her family, seeing her defiance, exiled her to their ancestral home, a forgotten village where no one knew their family name. They said it was for her own good, to shield the family from shame. But it felt like punishment. There, under the care of a cold, distant aunt, Jane endured a lonely pregnancy. No comfort. No care. Just waiting to give birth and somehow find a way to make sense of her broken world. When she finally gave birth to her twins, a boy and a girl, she thought it would all be worth it. The moment she held them, she wept, not out of sorrow, but joy. For the first time in months, she had something to live for. She named them quietly to herself, Ethan and Kara, but her joy was short-lived. The next morning, her aunt came with strangers. Jane never got the full story. She had been weak, recovering. They took the babies and told her it was for the best. Her mother later wrote, saying the children had been handed to a trusted institution, a children's home that would give them a better life than she ever could. They never gave her the name. Never told her where. And every attempt she made to find them after was met with silence or shame. Eventually, she was forced out of the family altogether. Homeless, rejected, and grieving, she drifted through life doing odd jobs, always wondering where her children were, if they were alive, if they were safe, if they ever wondered about her the way she wondered about them. Now, all these years later, in a strange house, working for a rich man whose daughter looked at her with venom in her eyes, that look, that rage, that pain, could it be? No, she whispered into the darkness, her hands trembling. It can't be. For months after giving birth, Jane remained in a fog of grief and confusion. Her body had healed, but her soul was hollow. She had waited, prayed, that Job would return, that he would somehow appear and fight for her, for their children, for the love they once swore was unshakable. But he never did. No letter. No messenger. Nothing but a void so deep, she began to wonder if he ever meant the promises he made the day her twins were taken from her remains etched in her memory like a wound that refused to close. She had been too weak to fight, too stunned to comprehend. One moment she was a mother, and the next, she was just empty. Her family said it was for the best. That someone else would raise them. That it was better this way. They expected her to move on, to forget. But how could a mother forget the weight of her children in her arms? The sound of their tiny cries? The way her heart had stretched to fit them both. The moment she saw them, she tried to obey. Tried to fall in line. But she couldn't. The walls of that ancestral home began to suffocate her. Each sunrise reminded her she was living a life stripped of its meaning. And so, one night, she packed the little she had and fled. She didn't have a destination, just a mission: find them. No matter how long it took, no matter how hopeless it seemed, she would search every corner of the earth if she had to. She had no power, no money, and no one to call family anymore. But she had her determination. That was all. She slept in shelters, took cleaning jobs, worked in kitchens, mopped floors, washed laundry for strangers, anything that would get her closer to her goal. She visited orphanages under fake names, claiming she wanted to adopt. She combed through streets, schools, hospitals, always searching for clues, always hoping for a face, a birthmark, a familiar eye shape. Years passed. She grew older. Life weighed heavy. Her back ached, her hands grew rough, but her heart never stopped aching. Even when the world moved on, Jane did not. Now, lying in that unfamiliar bed in Alden's house, with that cold, arrogant girl downstairs who looked too much like her pain, she felt the stirrings of a truth too cruel to speak aloud. Jane had woken up early, the way she always did. She tucked in the edges of her bedsheet, straightened her uniform, and stepped out quietly into the hallway. The house was silent, save for the ticking of a distant clock. It was peaceful. For a moment she moved room to room, cleaning with practiced grace, polishing surfaces until they gleamed, sweeping away every speck of dust. This job, though new, wasn't unfamiliar. What was unfamiliar was the quiet dread that clung to her every time she heard Kara's voice or caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of her eye. There was something unsettling about that girl, too sharp, too cold. Too familiar. By mid-morning, Jane was in the main sitting area dusting the lower shelves when she heard the deliberate shuffle of feet behind her. She didn't need to turn. She already knew who it was. Then came the first bowl, thud, tossed onto the marble floor, leftover rice scattering. Jane paused, looked at it, and silently turned back to her work. The second plate followed, splashing soup against the freshly polished floor. Jane didn't flinch. Her eyes just flickered. Tired, Kara stood with her arms folded, watching, expecting a reaction, waiting for Jane to raise her voice, to argue, to give her the excuse she needed. But Jane said nothing. She calmly picked up the broken plates and returned with a mop. She refused to give Kara what she wanted. That only infuriated her more. Later that day, Jane was walking through the corridor carrying a glass of steaming water from the kitchen, meant for Alden's herbal tea. She wasn't expecting Kara to come barreling around the corner like a storm. They collided, Kara's doing, and the glass fell with a sharp crack, the hot water splashing across Jane's arm and legs. Kara shrieked as if she had been the one burned. "You stupid woman. Look what you've done," she shouted, drawing the attention of nearby staff. Jane tried to apologize softly, rubbing her scalded skin. "I didn't see you coming, liar!" Kara screamed, her voice echoing through the hall. Then, with rage clouding her eyes, she slapped Jane hard across the face. The impact stung, but Jane didn't cry out. She simply staggered slightly. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" Kara shouted. "Trying to play the innocent? Trying to trap my father into keeping you here? You're disgusting." Jane raised her eyes, full of pain, but not hatred. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Kara slapped her again, then again. By the time the third slap landed, the other workers had rushed in, wide-eyed and speechless. A few tried to intervene, but Kara pushed them aside. "This woman is cursed," Kara shouted, her voice cracking now, hysteria rising. "I won't let her ruin this home." "I won't, Kara, that's enough," one of the cooks yelled, her hands trembling. Kara spun around, panting like a wild thing, her eyes red, her hands shaking. Jane stood frozen, the side of her face swollen, eyes glassy, and body trembling from the scald and the shame. From somewhere deep within Kara, the scream she wanted to let out rose, hot and maddening, but she bit it down. She stormed off, leaving the hallway in shocked silence. Jane sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling as they gripped the hem of her skirt. Her cheeks still throbbed from Kara's blows, and her arm bore the sting of the hot water, but none of that compared to the ache swelling in her chest, the kind of ache that made it hard to breathe. Her sobs were muffled, swallowed by the thick walls of her small room. She didn't want anyone to hear. Not the other house staff, not Alden, and certainly not Kara. She curled her knees to her chest and buried her face in them, letting the tears soak the fabric. Images of her children flashed through her mind, faint, blurry, lost in time. Had they grown up safe? Were they loved? Did they even know she existed? A mother's guilt was a wound that never closed. She had spent years searching, following dead leads and enduring jobs that paid too little for the toll they took. And now, in a strange twist of fate, she was in a mansion, paid more than she'd ever hoped for, yet treated worse than a stray dog. But she needed this job, her fingers clenched into fists. She had goals, she still hadn't given up on finding her children, and this job, however cruel the environment, would give her a chance. A chance to afford better private investigators. A chance to pay for transportation, for records, for anything that might bring her closer to the truth. No, she whispered through the quiet tears. I won't break. Not yet. She stood slowly, wiping her tears with trembling fingers. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was a fire behind them now. She'd endure. She'd survive. The next morning, Jane's face was still swollen and bruised, the marks of Kara's cruelty evident despite her best efforts to conceal them. She moved quietly through the house, careful to keep her head down, her eyes avoiding Alden's concerned gaze. When Alden caught sight of her in the hallway, his brow furrowed with worry. Jane, what happened to you? He asked gently, stepping closer. Jane forced a small, tired smile, hiding the pain behind practiced calm. I'm fine, Mr. Alden. Just slipped yesterday. Nothing to worry about. Alden didn't press further, sensing her reluctance. He wanted to help but knew that pushing might only make things worse. He nodded slowly. If you need anything, let me know. This isn't how I want anyone in my home to be treated. Jane's heart twisted with gratitude and sorrow. She wanted to tell him everything, the humiliation, the abuse, but she also knew the storm Kara could unleash if the truth came out. For now, silence was her shield. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, Jane whispered, and with that, she hurried away before her voice could betray her. Behind her, Alden watched with growing unease, the seed of suspicion planted deep in his mind. Something was wrong, and he was determined to uncover it, no matter what it took. Later that day, Alden sat rigid behind his mahogany desk, the glow of his laptop casting shadows across his stern face. The footage from the CCTV had been undeniable: Kara's outburst, the relentless slaps, the humiliation Jane endured right under their roof. His heart ached, torn between disappointment and concern. When Kara arrived at his office, she was unsuspecting, her usual defiant swagger masking the unease she couldn't quite name. But Alden's cold gaze stopped her in her tracks. Kara, sit down, he said firmly. She obeyed, wary but unafraid. I've seen everything, Alden began, voice low but hard. The way you've been treating Jane, it's unacceptable. This behavior can't continue. Kara's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. She deserves it, she spat. She's nothing but a burden. Alden's face darkened. That's exactly why I'm sending you abroad. You need space, a new environment, away from this house, away from all of this. He gestured broadly, so you can reflect. Maybe then you'll outgrow this anger, this hatred that's consuming you. A flash of fury crossed Kara's face, but it quickly crumbled into something far darker: despair. You're sending me away? Just like that. Her voice cracked. So now even you don't want me here? No one wants me. No one loves me. Without waiting for a response, she spun on her heel and fled the room. The sound of her door slamming echoed down the hallway, a harsh punctuation to the moment. Once alone in her room, Kara collapsed onto her bed, locking the door behind her. The wall seemed to close in as sobs racked her body, uncontrolled and endless. She felt utterly abandoned, a child left to drown in a sea of loneliness and rage. Kara stayed locked in her room, the heavy silence stretching through the entire day and night. She neither ate nor spoke, withdrawing completely from the world around her. The other workers, wary of her unpredictable temper, kept their distance. No one dared to knock on her door or ask if she was okay, but Jane couldn't bear it any longer. Pity gnawed at her heart. She remembered the broken girl beneath all that anger, and the loneliness she must be drowning in. Quietly, she approached Kara's door and knocked gently. Kara, please, can we talk? Jane's voice was soft, tentative. For a moment, no reply came. Then the door creaked open just enough to reveal Kara's angry eyes. Go away, Kara snapped, pushing the door wider and glaring fiercely. Jane didn't retreat. She stepped inside slowly, hands raised in peace. "I'm not here to fight," she whispered. I want to help." Kara's breath hitched, and without thinking, she swung her hand sharply toward Jane's face, but Jane didn't flinch or dodge. She stood still, staring into Kara's stormy eyes. Kara froze, her hand hanging mid-air, confusion flickering across her face. "Were you going to wait for me to slap you?" Kara asked, voice trembling. Jane looked back calmly. "If that would make you feel better, then I don't mind." In that moment, something inside Kara cracked. For the first time in years, the hard, angry walls she'd built around herself softened just a little. She felt touched. Not pity, not fear, something deeper and more complicated stirring within her, but before she could understand it, the moment passed, leaving a fragile silence between them.